Chapter 4:11. The people like Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin didn't know the value of the inkstone. It was understandable. After all, the inkstone rarely appeared in the world. Many people had never even heard of it, let alone seen it with their own eyes. It was said that because when Yuka had obtained a piece of inkstone, the bamboos he drew were different from other people. They looked vivid and lifelike, as if they were alive. Chao Buji wrote a poem for him, in which there were 2 lines. You can draw bamboo, you have a well-thought-out plan. This was also the origin of the idiom, have a well-thought-out plan, in later generations. Under the influence of her father, Lu Gong, Lu Wan was well-read. There was nothing she didn't know about astronomy, geography, classics, and history. If Qin Etian hadn't pointed out the origin of this stone, she herself wouldn't have been able to see its strangeness. However, when Qin Etian pointed out that this stone came from the Black Mountain in the far west and said its name, Lu Wan understood the true value of this stone. There was a strange saying, Black Heart Magic Stone can be seen, but Red Heart Inkstone is hard to find. The stone in the box was the Red Heart Inkstone that the ancients said was the most difficult to find. The middle part of it was dark red, like burning charcoal. 1 tael of black jade was worth 500 kilograms, so how much was such a big piece of black jade worth? Some things were so rare that it was difficult to measure their value with money. Because even if you had money, you might not be able to buy it. A treasured sword should be given to a hero, and a piece of black jade should be given to a master, Qin Etian said with a smile. When I go home, I'll ask my uncle to give me a painting. Qin Etian ignored Lu Wan's objection and opened the second box held by the man in black. He glanced at the thing inside and said, This is a phoenix coral from the East Sea. I have 2 pots at home, but it's a bit repetitive to place them, so I brought Auntie 1 pot. Qin Etian glanced at the living room, pointed to a square mahogany table in the corner, and said, Put it there. Etian, this isn't appropriate. It's really not appropriate. Lu Wan still wanted to stop him. Qin Etian opened the big box in the hands of the third man in black. There was a small silver bowl in the small bowl. There was a piece of black stuff in the small bowl. This was the ointment made from the shell of the black tortoise. It was cut into the size of a fingernail and placed in the silver bowl. After mixing it with warm water, it could be applied to the face before going to bed at night to keep youthful. Swallowing it could replenish qi, blood, and spirit. Auntie, this is a gift specially prepared for you. You can try it later. If the effect is good, I'll cut more for you, sure. The 3 Fang sisters sucked in a breath of cold air. This kind of thing was fatally attractive to women. Qin Etian opened the 4th huge box. Inside the box was a beautiful fish tank. 2 red fish were swimming in it, and there was a rootless plant that looked like a lotus leaf floating on the surface of the water. Qin Etian obviously liked this gift very much. He held Lu Wan's hand and introduced it. Auntie, there are 2 red dragons inside. I've raised them for a few years. They're not valuable, but I like this bunch of rootless white lotus the most. It's from the Changbai Heavenly Lake. Just like now, it floats on the surface of the water without root. When it blooms white lotus, it can fill the whole house, even the whole yard with a refreshing fragrance. TSK, many people couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Qin Etian still wanted to open the box below, but he was stopped by Lu Wan. Lu Wan looked at Qin Etian, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She said, Miss Etian, these gifts are too expensive, really too expensive. Every one of them is priceless. We really can't accept them. I know that you're grateful to Mr. Fang, and Fang Yen will also understand, but you must take these gifts back. In Lu Wan's view, these gifts brought by Qin Etian could be placed together as a treasure. Drawing a picture and throwing it out could cause a crazy treasure hunt in the outside world. No matter whose child she was, her parents would certainly not allow her to give these valuable collections to a teacher. Lu Wan even guessed that these gifts brought by this little girl were secretly moved out when her family was not around. At the end of the day, she was just a student. Qin Etian laughed and said, Auntie, these are all useful things. You can just use them as ordinary things. What graphite? It's just a little stronger in color. And that rootless white lotus is not as good as a pot of plum blossoms. Just take it as a story and don't take it to heart. Since I brought them out, Auntie, you must accept them no matter what. How can you take back the gifts that you've given out? But these gifts, Auntie, don't worry. Qin Tian comforted her with a smile. She took Lu Wan's hand and walked to another box, saying, "Come and have a look at this box." Fang Yen lost several times in a row and lost all the money he had just won. He even took out his wallet and put some of his capital in it. Of course, the advantage of losing money was that Yi Ro no longer complained about his smelly feet and kicked him from time to time. Finally, he won another round. When he was waiting to receive the money, the cell phone in Fang Yan's pocket rang. Fang Yan apologized and put down the long cards in his hand. He took out his cell phone and found it was a call from Fang Yingying. Fang Yan answered the phone and asked, "What's the matter?" "Junior Marshal Uncle, come back quickly. Your student has come to pay a New Year's visit," Fang Yingying said excitedly. "Student? Come to pay a New Year's visit." Fang Yan's first thought was that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had come, because among his students, only these two girls had been to Swallow Dock and knew his home address. However, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had just returned to Huaqing before the New Year's Day, and their parents couldn't let them go to Yanjing on the first day of the new year. Besides, when he called them last night, they also said that they would return to Yanjing after the Lantern Festival. Which student would come to pay a New Year's visit to him? "Junior Marshal Uncle, come back quickly. I'm busy, so I'll hang up." Fang Yingxiong shouted and hung up the phone. He dared to hang up on me? Fang Yen was infuriated. Do they still respect me as an elder? What's wrong? Something happened at home? Hearing the content of Fang Yan's call, the old ancestor put the long cards on the table and said, "Go back if you have something to do. I'm also tired and need a rest." The poker field was like a battlefield, and escaping was a big crime. Fang Yen said with a guilty face, "Old ancestor, do you want me to play a few more rounds with you?" "No need, no need. I want to play cards, and I'm not afraid of not being able to find a partner. Go back to your business," the old ancestor said. Fang Yen glanced at Yi Ro and said, "It said that a student came to pay a New Year's visit. I'll go back and have a look." Yi Ro didn't respond, and just lowered her head to play with the long cards in her hand. After Fang Yen put on his shoes and left, the old ancestor looked at Yi Ro with a smile and said, "You little girl, Fang Yen is a guest. How can you say that his feet are smelly? Why, you're unhappy because he won a few rounds?" "He's an idiot," Yi Ro said. "He's not an idiot. He's a smart person." The old ancestor sighed softly and said, "You think he keeps winning, so you're worried that I'll feel uncomfortable. But, if he lets me keep winning, will I feel comfortable in my heart? Because I'm older, you guys always take care of me. You don't want to win, and she, the silly girl, pretended to play the wrong cards for me. Your father doesn't want to play cards with me, and your second and third uncles don't want to win. No one was willing to win against me. They just wanted me to win. At first, I was happy, but after being coaxed by you for so many years, I feel that playing cards is meaningless. Fang Yen, that kid, didn't treat me as an outsider. When he first arrived, he tried his best to win. After he won, he lost all the money he won. He made me nervous for a while, but he also gave me a lot of faith. Tell me, how can I not like him when he's so considerate towards me?" Yi Ro was stunned for a long time, and then she scolded, "He's a slippery guy." The old ancestor nodded with a smile and said, "You're right this time. This guy is slippery. But I heard on the phone that a student came to visit him for the new year. What kind of student could come to our Swallow Dock?" Yi Ro was also confused. She knew it couldn't be Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin she was familiar with, but she couldn't guess who it was. Suddenly, She remembered the pair of eyes that were brighter than the moonlight in the night. It had been so long, but she still had a deep memory of those eyes. Perhaps anyone who saw that pair of eyes would find it hard to forget. "Is she here?" Yi Ro said softly. "Who is here?" the old ancestor asked. Yi Ro shook her head and didn't want to answer this question. The old ancestor gave Shi'er a look, and Shi'er immediately understood and said, "Old ancestor, I'm going to play with Du-Wan for a while. I'll be back soon." After that, she turned around and ran out of the door. Yi Ro knew that the old ancestor asked Shi'er to inquire about the news, so she didn't stop her. She never forced others, and she didn't like others to force themselves. When Fang Yen returned home, Qin Tian was in the backyard paying his grandfather, Fang Hui, a New Year's greeting. She took the cage that Eagle Mu was holding and lifted the black silk on top of the cage. Inside was a beautiful, snow-white bird with a flat beak. Qin Tian handed the bird to Fang Hui and said, "Grandpa, this is a King Kong eagle. It doesn't usually make a sound, but when it does, it's like the roar of a King Kong. It can drive away evil spirits and keep people safe." Looking closely, you and the King Kong eagle look alike. They all look very majestic. Fang Hui took the Vajra eagle and laughed. "Where did this girl come from? Her words and actions are as sweet as honey. This is a good gift. With this King Kong eagle, I don't have to worry about having nothing to do all day." Fang Yen stood at the door with a bitter smile. Looking at Qin Tian's back, he said, "Are you going to buy my whole family?" "Yes." Qin Tian answered matter-of-factly. "I want them all to like me." Chapter 412. A woman like Qin Tian would be regarded as a goddess wherever she went. After Qin Tian came, she became the center of the Fang family. Her every move and smile was the focus of everyone's attention. When Qin Tian was in the living room, everyone stood in the living room to watch. Qin Tian said that she was going to visit Fang Yan's grandfather. Everyone followed her to the backyard. Of course, the closest ones were Lu Wan, Fang Yan's 3 aunts, and several other female members of the Fang family. Fang Hao, Zhao Qingxin, and Zhou Fan were men, so they were embarrassed to get too close. Zhou Mingli didn't have such scruples. He stood at the door of the cottage with a tablet computer. All his thoughts were on Qin Tian. He didn't need to say a word. He just looked at her quietly, which made people's hearts beat fast. He knew that he was in love. He decided that he would ask her name. He would write down her phone number. He would pursue her crazily. "What should I do without you? Who will wipe my saliva?" He thought that this idea had taken root in his heart and was indestructible. However, Qin Tian's words made him heartbroken. Qin Tian turned around naturally. Her smile seemed to light up the room, which was a little dim because of the gloomy weather. At least in Zhou Mingli's eyes, there was a hot sun rising in the room. His mouth was dry, and he couldn't look straight at her. "I just want them all to like me," she said. If people still had some doubts about the relationship between Qin Tian and Fang Yen before, the truth was revealed when Qin Tian said this. Everyone present looked at Fang Yen and then at Qin Tian, dumbfounded. What was the relationship between these two people? They had long felt that there was something wrong with these two people. What kind of students would empty their family's treasures just to visit their teacher? Just these things that she had sent over, even if they were used as betrothal gifts, would be enough to make a person's back bend over. What's more, this was just a New Year's gift. How big of a deal was this? Lu Wan had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry, laugh, love, and be angry. How did Fang Yen end up harming the little girl? Fang Yan's 3 aunts were also surprised, but they couldn't help but feel proud of their nephew, Fang Yen. They were naturally elated that their nephew could be liked by such an outstanding girl. Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin were naturally full of joy. If Fang Yen really got together with this girl, it would be very beneficial to the Fang family and them. Perhaps he could borrow the other party's strength in some way. Zhou Fan's heart once again experienced an intense turmoil. Why was he so blind that he couldn't see all the good things about this kid? If it weren't for the idiotic things he said and did at that time, he wouldn't be in such an embarrassing situation in the Fong family now. He said that he would find a job for Fong Yan. The gifts Fong Yan's students sent today would probably let Fong Yan live a life of luxury for the rest of his life. Zhou Mingli's eyes turned red. He was very angry and felt wronged. He was angry that the fairy-like girl didn't like him. He felt wronged because, how could cousin Fong Yan like his student? Did he have any morality? Did he have any sense of shame? Fong Huwei was still confused until now. He was chatting with an old guy in the room. He said that a little girl was Fong Yan's student and wanted to visit him for New Year's. As an old man, he couldn't refuse the kindness of the younger generation. As a result, such a beautiful, lovely and charming girl came in. Every part of her body made people feel comfortable. She said some auspicious words and sent him a priceless King Kong eagle. This kind of eagle lived in the cliffs of the northern frontier. It had a keen sense of smell and could fly thousands of miles. It was difficult to catch it unless it had been a professional eagle hunter for more than 10 years. When Fong Huwei was young, he knew that the young chief had raised such a King Kong eagle. After his legs were paralyzed, he had never seen such a spiritual bird again. He didn't expect that he would get one today. Just like how a handsome guy would want a sports car, as a martial artist, who wouldn't want such a battle eagle? It was also the first time he met Qin Tian, but he didn't expect the girl to be so bold. After a while, he smiled and said, "Fong Yan, it seems that you're not a good teacher. You're speechless after being refuted by your own student." Fong Yan smiled bitterly and said, "It's really a headache to meet such a student." Qin Tian quickly spoke up for Fong Yan. She smiled and said to Fong Huwei, "Grandpa, Mr. Fong is a good teacher. All the students in the school like him. Hundreds of people go to his lectures." "Really?" Fong Huwei looked at Fong Yan and said, "It seems that you not only inherited our Fong family's talent in martial arts, but also have a strong cultural gene. It's a good thing to be well-versed in both literature and martial art. You need to keep it up." Lu Wan pulled Fong Yan's hand and signaled him to follow her to the yard. "Fong Yan, who is this student of yours? She sent a lot of gifts. Although I don't know the value, just hearing the names made my hands tremble. I said we can't accept them, but she didn't want to take them back. What should we do with these things?" Fong Yan thought for a while and said, "Mom, don't worry. I'll talk to her." "Okay. You talk to her," Lu Wan said. "We don't accept undeserved rewards. No matter how precious these things are, we can't accept gifts from others. Talk to her and ask her to take these gifts back." "Okay," Fong Yan said with a smile. Fong Yan went back to the room and said to Qin Tian, "Let Grandpa rest for a while. Let's go out for a walk." Qin Tian said goodbye to Fong Huwei obediently and said, "Grandpa, I'll chat with you in a while. I like chatting with old people the most." "Okay." Fong Huwei laughed. "Grandpa is waiting for you." There were also many people watching at the gate of the Fong family's yard. Fong Yan couldn't take Qin Tian out for a stroll. He had to take her to a remote place in the martial arts hall and said, "Why are you here?" "I'm here to wish Mr. Fong a happy new year," Qin Tian said seriously. "Isn't it natural for a student to wish a teacher a happy new year?" "That's true, but you don't need to bring such expensive gifts. My mother is such a gentle person, and your gift scared her. I was also scared when I saw the King Kong eagle. These are all rare treasures and you just casually took them out to give away?" "I didn't just casually take them out. Each gift was carefully selected by me in the storage room," Qin Tian explained. "I'm not giving them away, I'm giving them to my teacher." Fong Yan smiled bitterly and said, "Who would give such gifts to their teacher?" "My family." Qin Tian pointed at her own face. Qin Tian put her hands in the pockets of her down jacket, kicked the snow at her feet and said, Don't worry, I told my mother when I came. I said I wanted to visit my savior, and she asked me to bring a few gifts. These were approved by my mother. I didn't steal them from the storage room. Even if I wanted to steal, I wouldn't do it so openly. Mu Ing is my mother's confidant. He won't keep my secret. Bring them back, Fang Yen advised. These gifts are too expensive. We can't afford it. Besides, as I told you that night, that matter is long over, and you have already repaid me. Now it is I who owes you, not the other way around. You really want me to bring them back? Yes. Then let's smash it, Qin Etian said, waving her hand. Whichever one you want me to bring back, I'll smash it. Do you want to try? How can you do that? Because I have money, Qin Etian said. What's wrong with rich people being willful? Qin Etian smiled and looked at Fang Yen with his beautiful eyes and said, In fact, these gifts are also gifts from the Qin family. Thank you for saving my life. In addition, you may not know the value of the Rubik's Cube. When the product is on the market, it can bring us huge and amazing profits. It may be an unimaginable number. I'm just recommending her. Without your recommendation, I probably wouldn't be interested in letting her see my mother, right? Qin Etian said with a chuckle. Sometimes things are so clever. Okay. Fang Yen nodded. I'll accept these gifts. I'm just keeping them for you for the time being. Qin Etian didn't want to talk about this topic with Fang Yen, and said, Mr. Fang, I came all the way from Yanjing to visit you for the new year. Do you want me to stay in your house for a few days? You don't want to? Can't we have a meal together? If you're willing to stay for a few days, it's naturally not a problem. As long as you don't mind the shabby conditions here. Fang Yen said sincerely. It's just that we don't have that many rooms in our house, and you brought too many bodyguards. How about letting them go back first? I can assure you that you won't be in any danger in Swallow Dock. You agree? Qin Etian said with a smile. I thought you would find a reason to refuse. It's not a big deal to begin with, Fang Yen said. It's naturally not a problem to eat at home. Fang Yen and Qin Etian were chatting in the backyard when Fang Yingying sneakily walked over. Seeing that Fang Yen didn't say anything, he looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. Fang Yen couldn't stand it anymore and said, Fang Yingying, if you have something to say, just say it. Why are you sneaking around? Fang Yingying grinned, but his smile was very unnatural. He lowered his voice and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, Miss Yi came to visit. Chapter 413. Yi Ro is here? Why is Yi Ro here? Yi Ro was a special case in Swallow Dock. She was aloof and independent. She had a close relationship with the old drunkard, but no one knew that she had a good relationship with anyone else. In the past, no one had ever heard of her paying a New Year's visit to anyone's family, nor had she paid a New Year's visit to the Fang family. She always went through the back door when she came to the Fang family. That way, she could take a shortcut to the courtyard where the old drunkard lived. Even in front of Fang Yan's grandfather, Fang Huwei, her attitude was quite cold. Because she was a woman of the Yi family, because of her temperament, and most importantly, because she was beautiful and violent, everyone understood her behavior. As time went by, there were even some people who appreciated her. They felt that she was in line with the poem, There is a beauty in the north, peerless and isolated. Besides, the Yi family was prosperous, so it was not Yi Ro's turn to socialize in public. She just needed to practice martial arts and be happy with her ancestor. Why is Yi Ro here today? Fang Yen looked at Fang Yingying confusedly. Fang Yingying shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. Slap. Fang Yen slapped Fang Yingying's head and scolded, You're here. Why can't you tell me? Why do you keep your voice down like a thief? Why can't you tell others about it? Fang Yingying looked aggrieved. He covered his head and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, I just don't want you to be in a difficult position. Slap. Fang Yen slapped him again and scolded even more fiercely. He said, What's so difficult about it? What's so difficult about it? No, no. Fong Yingying covered his head and ran away like a rat. Junior Marshal Uncle was so angry that he knew he must be in a difficult position. Fong Yen looked at Qin Tian and said with a smile, Yi Rou is my neighbor and my friend. Today is the first day of the spring festival. She came to visit. She's pretty, right? Qin Tian asked. She's all right. Fong Yen replied reservedly, she's the prettiest girl in our village. Everyone knew that the #1 beauty of Swallow Dock was Yi Rou. Phoenix was also very beautiful, but she did not belong to Swallow Fort. Are you the most handsome guy in your village? Qin Tian giggled and asked. Bai Xiu's loathsome face appeared in Fong Yan's mind at the mention of the word country bumpkin. Therefore, Fong Yan slapped Bai Xiu's face out of his mind and said, They said so, but I don't care about these false reputations. What kind of village flowers and grass are they? Is there any point in lining them up here and there? Qin Tian nodded in agreement and said, That makes sense. They say I'm the prettiest girl in Rosefinch High. I don't care about this kind of thing. What class belle and campus belle? It's not like you can make a living out of comparing. After that, they looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. Fong Yan had always felt that Qin Tian had a maturity that didn't match her age. Fong Yan also felt that Qin Tian and he had an indescribable spiritual tacit understanding. This girl was really an angel who fell to the earth. When Fong Yan took Qin Tian back to the house, Yi Rou was sitting in the living room with Fong Yan's mother, Lu Wan, and Fong Yan's aunts, drinking tea. Yi Rou was still wearing the festive cloth button gown and black cotton skirt. She didn't touch the teacup in front of her and just answered the questions of Lu Wan and Fong Yan's 3 aunts politely. Lu Wan asked a question, and Yi Rou answered one by one. Lu Wan didn't speak, and Yi Rou didn't take the initiative to find a topic. She was calm, patient, and didn't fight. She looked like a cultivator who had cultivated for thousands of years. Lu Wan's language skills were excellent, but she couldn't stand Yi Rou's temper. She asked a lot of questions, and Yi Rou answered them in 2 or 3 words. For example, she said that the last time she saw the ancestor was in the summer, and she took she for a walk in the village. She hadn't seen the ancestor for a long time. How was she? The weather was cold, and she had to take care of herself. Yi Rou's answer was only 2 words. She was fine. Another example, Fong Yan's aunts said that when Rou's dress was really beautiful. The golden stitches were fine, and the embroidered phoenix was like a real one. This dress must have been sewn by Sister One. The Sister One she mentioned was Wen Xinyao, Yi Rou's mother. Yi Rou's answer was still 2 words. Yes. When Lu Wan and the 3 sisters of the Fong family were at their wits' end, Fong Yan finally entered the house. Lu Wan waved to Fong Yan and said, Fong Yan, when Rou is here, you young people should have a good talk. Then she looked at Qin Tian and said with a smile, Etienne, since you are here, have fun in our swallow dock for a few days. You sit here for a while. I'll go to the kitchen and prepare lunch. Thank you, aunts. Qin Tian said sweetly. This girl had a very high IQ. Once she made up her mind to do something, there was no possibility of failure. For example, she made up her mind to win the favor of everyone in the Fong family. I'll go to the kitchen, too. Fong Yisin, the eldest aunt, said. I'll go to find Menjing and the baby elephant. I don't know where these 2 children are. Fong Yiling, the second aunt, also stood up and left. I'll go to see where numerology is. Fong Yijing, the third aunt, also ran away. Thus, only Fong Yan, Qin Tian, and Yi Rou were left in the big living room. Yi Rou sat on the sofa. She didn't drink tea, didn't speak, and didn't even look at Fong Yan and Qin Tian. Qin Tian stood in the courtyard with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. There was an inexplicable smile on his face, and he looked at Yi Rou thoughtfully. Fong Yan opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. Fong Yan felt that Fong Yingying was really a wise man sometimes. What he said really came true. It was really difficult for him to be stuck in the middle. However, it was not a solution to always be in such a stalemate. Therefore, Fang Yen turned to look at Qin Tian and said, "Do you want some tea?" "Okay." Qin Tian nodded. "I'll go and pour some tea for you," Fang Yen said. He turned around and ran out of the door. He felt that he needed to go to the yard and take a deep breath of fresh air. It was so exciting. After Fang Yen left, there were only Qin Tian and Yi Ro in the room. Qin Tian was still looking at Yi Ro with a smile, and Yi Ro finally raised her head and glanced at Qin Tian. Qin Tian walked towards Yi Ro and sat down on the mahogany sofa in front of her. He was dignified and elegant, and had the same strong aura. Qin Tian looked at Yi Ro and asked with concern, "Sister, are you feeling better?" "I'm fine." Yi Ro answered expressionlessly. "That's good. When I saw you last time, I was worried that there would be sequelae in your body. We are all women, and our bodies are weaker than men. Sister, you must take care of yourself." "Not necessarily," Yi Ro said. "What not necessarily?" "A woman's body is not necessarily weaker than a man's," Yi Ro said. "Could it be that your body is better than Teacher Fang's?" "I've seen Mr. Fang's kung fu is very good, indeed better," Yi Ro said. "Sister, you're so awesome. Mr. Fang is already so powerful, but he still can't beat you," Qin Tian praised. "Sister, you must be the number one in Swallow Dock, right?" Yi Ro stared at Qin Tian with vigilance. This girl set a trap with just a few words. She wanted to lead me into the ditch. If she said that she was the number one in Swallow Dock, then where was Fang Yen? If she wasn't the number one in Swallow Dock, then wasn't it a lie when he said that a woman's body was not necessarily weaker than a man's? Yi Ro picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip of fragrant tea. She didn't answer Qin Tian's question, but said softly, "Our Swallow Dock rarely has outsiders come in." The subtext was that those who came in were all outsiders. "I'm not an outsider. I'm Mr. Fang's friend," Qin Tian said with a smile. "Besides, Swallow Dock belongs to Huaxia. Huaxia's people can all come in." Yi Ro ignored Qin Tian's counterattack and said lightly, "We guard Huaxia's Swallow Dock, and we are also Huaxia's Swallow Dock. Swallow Dock is one with us. For us, those who don't belong to Swallow Dock are outsiders. Just like those who don't have the surname Qin, it's difficult to become a member of the Qin family." Qin Tian nodded and said, "The general gets off the horse and the prime minister gets off the sedan chair. The people of Swallow Dock are indeed qualified to say this. But not everyone is qualified to be a member of Swallow Dock." Qin Tian crossed his hands and rubbed them gently, saying, "But if there is such a person who is qualified, that person must be me, because I cherish your glory, admire your sacrifice, recognize your value, and I'm willing to go through thick and thin with you. Swallow Dock is Huaxia's Swallow Dock. Every person of Huaxia can do their part for Swallow Dock. Do you still not qualified to be a member of Swallow Dock by doing this?" Qin Tian smiled and said, "I've only heard that people of Swallow Dock are brave in killing enemies, but I've never heard that people of Swallow Dock are heartless to their friends. Am I right, sister? If you come, Swallow Dock will naturally welcome you. Does sister welcome me?" Yi Ro was stunned. She didn't expect that he would pursue this question. She said with slight annoyance, "I won't tell you." In terms of language expression, she was indeed not as good as Qin Tian, who had hidden tricks and traps in every sentence. If you were not careful, you would be trapped in them and unable to move. However, she also knew very well that this excessively beautiful girl in front of her couldn't fight with her one-on-one. Otherwise, she had 10,000 ways to make her black and blue. Yi Ro thought that she still liked Fang Yen, because when she was unhappy, she could beat him up. Chapter 4:14. If Yi Ro was a white peony, then Qin Tian was a red rose. Yi Ro's temperament was soft but firm. She looked white and quiet, aloof from worldly affairs. However, her appearance was magnificent, luxurious, and luxurious. She had the reputation of being a national beauty, the queen of flowers. There was a poem that said, "Wealth and romance are the best, and all flowers bow their heads to the fragrant dust." The peony didn't compete, but no flower could compete with it. Chin-Etienne didn't hide or hide. She was as passionate as fire and charming as water. Whether it was a cliff, a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, she would rush over with her eyes closed. She brought others a beautiful illusion of love by burning herself resolutely. The branches and leaves had sharp thorns, and if one was not careful, he would be stabbed by her. Now, the white peony and the red rose gathered together, competing to bloom. That kind of beauty was dazzling. Unfortunately, there was no audience in the living room. Even Zhou Mingli, who fell in love with Chin-Etienne at first sight, was completely desperate after knowing that she liked Fang Yen. He ran to the stone river to enjoy the cool wind and pretend to be depressed. It was not the first time that they met, but it was the first time that they had a conflict. In other words, it was the first time that they communicated with each other as enemies. When Yi Rou said, "I won't tell you," Chin-Etienne couldn't help but be a little surprised. She never thought that the tough woman who treated Fang Yen as a mortal enemy at school would have such a girlish side. If those guys who liked violence and regarded her as an idol and wanted to be whipped by her every day saw this scene, their eyeballs would probably fall to the ground. However, Chin-Etienne didn't feel contradictory at all. She was such a person. When she wanted to beat you, she would beat you. When she didn't want to tell you, she wouldn't tell you. In a sense, she was braver than herself, more direct than herself, and more willful than herself. Facing such an opponent, Chin-Etienne had a feeling of palpitation. Chin-Etienne was not afraid of any opponent, but in the field of love, she only hoped that they were unique to each other. Because if you cared too much, you would be afraid of failure. Even if the possibility was minuscule, they would still worry about it. Chin-Etienne looked straight into Yi Rou's eyes and said, "Don't say it if you don't want to. I already know the answer." Yi Rou knew what the answer was. Both of them were smart people, so there was no need to be too straightforward. That would only make the relationship between them more awkward. They shouldn't be enemies. Yi Rou thought Chin-Etienne was the prettiest girl she had ever seen. She even thought she was more beautiful than herself. Her facial features were exquisite and dazzling, like the blazing sun, like the bright moon, like the brightest star among the stars. She sparkled in the crowd. Chin-Etienne also felt that Yi Rou had an aura that was ethereal and pure. Clean, pure, and approachable. If it was said that his aura would make people feel oppressed and retreat 3 feet away, then Yi Rou's aura would make people feel pity and respect that they couldn't bear to disturb her. They should appreciate each other and become best friends. How could they be enemies? Thinking of this, both of them couldn't help but be fascinated. The room was very quiet, but the atmosphere didn't make people feel awkward. 2 extremely beautiful girls sat there without saying a word, but it didn't make people feel strange, as if it should be so. Fang Yen, who had been out for a long time, finally came back with a cup of hot tea. He put the cup in front of Chin-Etienne and said, "Be careful, it's hot." Seeing that the tea in front of Yi Rou was cold, he picked up the cup and said, "I'll get you a cup of hot tea." Yi Rou glanced at Fang Yen and said, "If you don't want to sit here, come in when it's time to eat." Chin-Etienne giggled and said, "Mr. Fang, are you afraid that I will fight with Sister Yi? I can't beat her." "No. How could it be?" Fang Yen wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "I just went to the kitchen to have a look. I'm afraid that the food they make is too greasy. I know you guys don't like to eat greasy food." "I like to eat meat," Yi Rou said. "The ambush you made last time in the back mountain was very good." "I also like to eat meat," Chin-Etienne said. "Did you forget? In Huaqing, we went to eat at Zhang Yuan restaurant. The T-bone steak there is very good." Haha, Fang Yan's smile was uglier than a crying face. "I like to eat meat too. So when I was very young, I followed my friends in the village to catch sparrows, rabbits, and grasshoppers. Then, I cooked the ingredients myself. Etienne hasn't eaten it yet. I'll take you there when I have the chance. Yi Rou looked at Qin Etienne and said, the friends Fang Yen mentioned are Yi Fengxing, Zhu Xiaodan, and Li Xiaotian. They even formed a group called Swallow Fort's Pretty Men Team. Isn't it funny? It's really funny. So he was this childish when he was young? There are things that are even more childish. Every year when we compete, he would hug my leg and beg for mercy when he couldn't beat me, crying and yelling for me not to hit his face. No way? Mr. Fang has such a shameless side? But I've known him for a long time and I know his character quite well. There are also some things you don't know. I'll get to know him later. He lived in Swallow Fort for more than 20 years. We can't change the length of life, but we can determine the width of life. I always think the width of life is more abundant. Practicing martial arts requires constant dripping to wear through a stone. Tai Chi requires instant enlightenment. Fang Yen suddenly found a serious problem. He only cared about pouring tea for Qin Etienne and changing tea for Yi Rou. He forgot that he hadn't drunk hot tea yet. No wonder he felt sweaty and thirsty. It turned out that he hadn't drunk water for a long time. Fang Yingying, Fang Yen turned around and shouted toward the backyard. No one answered. Fang Haohan, still no one answered. Fang Yen shook his head helplessly, as if he was talking to himself or explaining to Qin Etienne and Yi Rou. I don't know where these two guys are. They don't know how to entertain the guests, and they can't find anyone to drink a cup of tea. I'll go pour a cup of tea. So, Fang Yen got up and ran outside. He really couldn't stand it anymore. He sat in front of the two women and felt out of breath. These two people were talking about something irrelevant, but why did he feel that there was a hidden killing intent in every word? Moreover, he was the chicken that was being coveted by the killing intent. If you're like this, you might as well fight to your heart's content. Mu Ying was standing in the yard enjoying the plum blossoms. Seeing Fang Yen running out, he said with a smile, "It's not easy to deal with this kind of situation, is it?" "Yes." Fang Yen sighed softly. "I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. I'm a shy person, and I've never been in love before. I really have no experience in dealing with girls." "That's a pity." Mu Ying reached out his hand to catch a snowflake. His handsome face was absorbed in watching the fluff-like snowflake melting in his palm. "Miss is not an easy person to deal with." Fang Yen looked at Mu Ying curiously and asked, "How do you usually deal with her?" "Deal with her?" Mu Ying shook his head. "I've never been able to deal with Mississippi. I do whatever she says." Fang Yen really envied Qin Etienne. It was such a happy thing to have such a brainless fan. Fang Yen looked for Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan all over the yard. He felt that he needed them very much. Yi Rou, Qin Etienne, Fang Yingying, and Fang Haohan all knew them. Moreover, these two idiots were the spies that Yi Rou had arranged around him. Perhaps she didn't need to arrange them. They were born to be rebellious. If they could sit in the living room with him, they could talk about their daily lives, talk about the past, and make jokes. Time would pass quickly. The two women wouldn't stab him in the dark, and he wouldn't feel like sitting on pins and needles. However, Fang Yen looked all over the yard and didn't see Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan. They seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Those two bastards. Fang Yen gnashed his teeth and cursed. Beside Stone River. It was a good place near the call, facing the wind and the sun. Two figures, one fat and one thin, were tightly huddled together, looking at the fire in front of them expectantly. "How well is it?" Fang Yingying smelled the fragrance in the air and asked. Fang Haohan sniffed hard and said, "It's well done. Open the pot." Fang Yingying shouted. Then, he grabbed at the open fire above the fire with both hands like an iron rake. Fang Haohan didn't want to be outdone. He used a small iron piece to fly up and down, and the red-hot firewood was pushed aside by him. Under the fire there were several big black sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes were covered with dust and didn't look good, but the fragrance they emitted made people swallow their saliva uncontrollably. "Brother Hero, you first." Fang Yingying modestly and politely made a gesture of invitation. "Brother Hero, you first." Fang Yingying was also very polite and gave way to the older one. Then, the two reached out to grab the biggest sweet potato at the same time. "Haha, the hero chooses first." Fang Yingying grabbed the sweet potato and said, "Brother Hero, you choose first." Fang Haohan also grabbed the sweet potato and said, "You let me choose first. Let go first." "You can choose anything except this. Is this still called me choosing first? You didn't let me choose first. Do you want to fight?" The fat on Fang Yingying's face shook again. "Fight after you're full," Fang Yingying suggested. Fang Yingying felt that what Fang Haohan said made sense, so the big sweet potato was divided into half by them. They greedily ate the roasted sweet potatoes in their hands, feeling that there was nothing more blissful than this. "Brother Hero, what do you think Junior Marshal Uncle is doing now?" Fang Yingying asked curiously. "He's looking for us." Fang Yingying took a bite of the sweet potato. It was so hot that his tongue rolled around in his mouth. "He's definitely looking for us to go in and flirt. Does he think we're stupid? We're not going in." "Brother Hero, if you were Junior Marshal Uncle, who would you choose?" Fang Haohan asked. Fang Yingying raised his dirty fat face and thought seriously for a while. He slapped Fang Haohan's head and said angrily, "Don't ask me such difficult questions when we're eating." Chapter 4:15. Fang Haohan was slapped on the head and said with grievance, "Since we have nothing to do, let's discuss it." Fang Yingxiong took a bite of the sweet potato and chewed it in his mouth. His face was full of sadness as he said, "How can I choose? Miss Yi is beautiful, Miss Qin is also beautiful. Miss Ye's martial arts are good, Miss Qin's background is great. Miss Yi is very good to me, Miss Qin is also very good to me. Which should I choose? Which can I choose? If I choose gentle, what about heaven reliance? If I choose heaven reliance, what about gentle? No matter which one of these girls I let down, it would be an unforgivable sin. God will send me to hell." "That's true." Fang Haohan nodded in agreement. "If I were Junior Marshal Uncle, I wouldn't know who to choose either. Every one of them is so outstanding, every one of them is so affectionate. Junior Marshal Uncle isn't that good either. Why would they choose Junior Marshal Uncle?" "That's right." Fang Yingxiong agreed. "He's handsome, but everyone says Fatso looks lucky. Skinny looks like he's lucky too," Fang Haohan added. "Yes, Fatso and Skinny both look lucky." Fang Yingying couldn't help but bring Fang Haohan along. At least, they were on the same side on this issue. "And we look safe. Which girl follows us? TSK, we definitely won't have to worry about cheating. Even if she has a beautiful girlfriend, we won't even look at them. Junior Marshal Uncle is funny, we aren't worse than him. Everyone laughed at the joke I told last time." "Then what's the difference?" Fang Yingying asked doubtfully. "Is it because our luck is especially bad?" "Yes. It must be bad luck," Fang Haohan said. "Also, we can't always stand with Junior Marshal Uncle." "Why?" "It's not that I'm worried that others will think that he's the red flower and we're the green leaf. The key is that we're one generation younger than him. Think about it, if a girl who likes us hears that we're going to call him Junior Marshal Uncle, won't she be scared away?" Yes. Fang Haohan nodded repeatedly. "That's what I said. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had praised us for being cute, but why are you so close to Junior Marshal Uncle? It's because they know that if they follow us, they have to call Junior Marshal Uncle Uncle. If they grow up and marry Junior Marshal Uncle, we have to call them Master's wife. Who wouldn't want such a big advantage? But we also have our own style." Fang Yingying tore off a piece of sweet potato skin and said, "When Junior Marshal Uncle is now in a terrible mess like a headless fly, we're eating roasted sweet potatoes with relish. This kind of life, I wouldn't exchange it even for a fairy." Yes, I wouldn't exchange it even for a fairy. Fong Haohan echoed. If it's a fairy sister, I'd exchange it. Junior Marshal Uncle is so pitiful. Fong Yingying sighed and said. Yes. Junior Marshal Uncle is so pitiful. Fong Haohan took a bite of the sweet potato and said bitterly, I really want to bear this unbearable suffering for Junior Marshal Uncle. Sigh. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan suddenly lost interest in talking, but the sweet potato in their hands was still sweet and delicious. When lunch was ready, the Fangs had to eat at the table. Qini Tian and Yi Rou sat together, Fong Yen sat next to Yi Rou, and Lu Wan sat next to Qini Tian. Fong Huwei sat at the main table, and Fong Yan's 3 aunts and 3 uncles sat on both sides of the table. Zhou Mingli stole a bottle of Shadaozi to celebrate his breakup again, but he got drunk halfway and was carried back by Zhou Fan. Fong Huwei looked at Qini Tian, then looked at Yi Rou and said with a smile, Eat, eat. Just treat it as your own home. Lu Wan helped Qini Tian and Yi Rou get some food and said, You two eat more, you're too thin. Qini Tian rushed to help Lu Wan serve soup and said, It's cold, auntie, you should drink more soup to warm your stomach. She was going to ladle soup for the 3 sisters of the Fong family. How could the 3 of them dare to let this young miss do it? Her extravagance and the gifts she had sent today had really shocked them. They didn't know what was going on, but they felt that this girl was too ostentatious, but they were very happy. Every one of them was of the highest quality, and they had never heard of such treasures. Who would dislike gifts that were too expensive? Fong Yijing especially admired her sister-in-law's determination. Zhou Fan was a small leader in the unit, and when her subordinates sent some bags, branded watches and so on to her home, she would throw them back mercilessly. But if those subordinates also sent gifts like this young lady of the Qin family, such as a piece of red inkstone, a basin of phoenix coral, and a big bowl of black turtle ointment, who wouldn't want to challenge their own weakness like this? Fong Yixing had to drink with guests at the Li family's house at noon, so he didn't come back for lunch. The 3 aunts of the Fangs didn't say anything, and the 3 uncles of the Fangs didn't know what to say. Even Lu Wan only talked about some interesting stories about Swallow Dock and Fong Yen under Qini Tian's lead. It had to be said that this was the dullest lunch that Fong Yen had ever had since he came back home. Fong Huwei was the first to put down his bowl and chopsticks, saying that he was full. Fong Yijing hurriedly pushed the old man back to the backyard, and then he was unwilling to go to the table again. The others didn't have such good luck. The guests hadn't left, and they couldn't just leave their bowls and leave. So they could only eat unhurriedly. When others talked, they listened. When others joked, they also laughed for a while. Qini Tian and Yi Rou put down their bowls and chopsticks, and the others felt relieved as if a big stone had been lifted from their hearts. These 2 young girls actually had such power, pressuring others to the point that they couldn't breathe. Lu Wan asked someone to clean up the bowls and chopsticks and said, You young people can sit and drink tea and chat. I'll go to rest for a while, I have the habit of taking a nap. Soon, Fong Yen found that only he, Yi Rou, and Qini Tian were left in the living room. Fong Yen thought for a while and said, Let me go out with you. Yi Rou went straight to the outside and said, I'm going home. Qini Tian looked at Fong Yen and said with a smile, Although I really want to stay for a few days, I have to go back. Fong Yen knew that Qini Tian couldn't really stay. If she dared to stay in his house, the Qin family would be in chaos. Fong Yen nodded and said, I'll see you off. Fong Yen walked Qini Tian to the parking place of the training hall. Qini Tian stood still and turned to look at Fong Yen, saying, Mr. Fong, when will we meet next time? I'll go back to Huaqing after the Spring Festival, Fong Yen said. Since you're a teacher there, you should do your job well. You must finish what you started. Qini Tian nodded and said, I can't go to Huaqing. I'll accept the new position my mother arranged for me on the 8th. But wherever you are, my eyes will be there. Fong Yen smiled bitterly and said, Take care of yourself and be careful. Qin Tian pointed at Mu Ying and said, I'll take care of myself. My safety is their job. Fang Yen looked at Mu Ying, who shrugged his shoulders and said, Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, she will be alive. If I die, I won't care so much. Thank you, Fang Yen said sincerely. What are you thanking me for? This is my job, Mu Ying said. Qin Tian walked to Fang Yen, and Fang Yen took the initiative to open his arms. Qin Tian smiled and threw herself into Fang Yan's arms. She hugged Fang Yan's waist tightly and said, I have a scar on my chest. The doctor said I can remove it with lasers or golden chrysalis muscle nourishing powder. I said I should keep it. It's a witness. Witness what? That I have the courage to risk my life for another person. Qin Tian left with her luxury motorcade. Fang Yen stood there for a long time. When Fang Yen returned home, Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan finally showed up. Fang Yen grabbed Fang Yingying and asked angrily, Where have you been? Hero was in a bad mood. I went out with him, Fang Yingying said with a sad face. His Xiao Bai, what's wrong with Xiao Bai? Fang Yen asked anxiously. Xiao Bai was Fang Haohan's rabbit. The rabbit was his lover, his lifeblood. Usually, Fang Yingying wouldn't even let him touch it. If something happened to Xiao Bai, it would be a heavy blow to Fang Haohan. I haven't eaten for 2 days, Fang Yingying said in pain. Fang Yingying reached out to slap Fang Yingying's head. Fang Yingying quickly dodged and said, Grandpa wants you to see him. Remember it. Fang Yen came to Fang Hui's cabin. The old man was sitting in front of the window, playing with the King Kong eagle in the cage. The King Kong eagle was majestic and beautiful, but it didn't want to open its mouth to cry. It looked very noble and cold. Fang Yen said with a smile, Why did you accept such an expensive gift? It's a gift from a girl. I can't hurt her, can I? This girl is really a villain. You know you can't accept her gift, but you don't want to return it, Fang Hui said confidently. Tell me, what's going on today? I don't know either, Fang Yen said helplessly. Qin Tian came to visit, Yi Rou also came to visit, so they bumped into each other. My mom said everyone should stay for lunch, and then everyone sat together for lunch. Fang Hui grinned and said, I used to worry that you were a football, and everyone wanted to kick you away. Now it seems that you're a basketball, and everyone wants to throw you into the basket. It's good to compete, it's good to compete. Fang Hui's eyes became stern and said, But you have to deal with this matter properly. You can't hurt the girls. Our Fang family has been guarding the family and protecting the country, and we've never done anything wrong to others. I understand. Fang Yen bowed in acknowledgement. Chapter 416. Dear passengers, Flight YY60225 from Huaqing to Yanjing is about to arrive at Yanjing Airport. Perhaps it was because of the Spring Festival, but the number of seats on the plane wasn't ideal. There weren't many passengers, so the plane seemed a bit empty. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the first-class seats in the front cabin, and many people were still whispering to each other. It seemed that something interesting was happening. Chiba Hirobumi, who was wearing a wide-sleeved white robe, and Chiba Haomu, who was also dressed with a white ribbon tied around his head, were indeed very eye-catching. The father and son were dressed differently from ordinary people, and they were silent. Ever since they got on the plane, they had closed their eyes to rest and even refused the meals and drinks provided by the flight attendant. The plane began to glide on the ground, like a silver monster charging toward the castle in front of it. Chiba Hirobumi sighed softly and said, This is Yanjing City. This is Yanjing City. Chiba Haomu also opened his eyes wide and looked at the familiar yet strange city seriously. It had wonderful stories on TV, and there were all kinds of legends in novels. He was very familiar with this city that was becoming more and more influential internationally, but this was his first time setting foot on this magical land. It's also my first time here, Chiba Hirobumi said with emotion. 20 years ago, when I wanted to come, that man went to Japan first. After the battle at Hachibana Mountain, my confidence dropped to an unprecedented freezing point. I suddenly realized that the light that I was proud of and worked hard to shine in the world was so dim and insignificant. Have you seen fireflies? They also know that they can shine, and they think that they will shine brightly, but in the end they are just fireflies. Qianye Haowu looked at his father in shock. He had never told him about that battle before. Even when he took the initiative to ask, he only said a few words. Today, he took the initiative to talk about it and analyzed his feelings at the time. Why was this? Just because he was going to meet his old friend again? Father, you didn't lose either. Chiba Haomu said. No. I lost. I lost. He single-handedly overturned the Dongyang Peninsula, said Chiba. That in itself is already better than us. Everyone had pinned their hopes on me, but I didn't have the power to keep it, so he won. They won with vigor and confidence. The Japanese men were speechless, and everyone was ashamed to talk about this person and this matter. This was also the reason why that person's matter was not known in Japan. Every time someone worships me and respectfully calls me the Japanese sword god, I feel guilty and uneasy. Then, he put more effort into comprehending swordsmanship and climbing the path of martial arts. Because I'm afraid to see their eyes. They think you're an omnipotent god. I've been comprehending the sword for 20 years. The number of swords I can use in my heart has increased, and the number of swords I can see in my eyes has decreased. Finally, I've reached the state of being one with the sword. When I once again set foot on Hua Xia's land, filled with confidence, when I wanted to challenge Hua Xia's hero using the same method that he had used before, when I wanted to win boldly and vigorously, I didn't expect to meet such an opponent. At the mention of Fang Yan, Chiba Haomu was burning with anger. His face was pale and he said fiercely, "Does that kind of person deserve to be father's opponent? He won by cheating. It doesn't count." Ridiculous. Chiba Haomu's tone was unprecedentedly stern. A win is a win, a loss is a loss. How is cheating? What is cheating? The path of swordsmanship focuses on change and impermanence. If you don't even understand this, when can you understand the Great Way? I know you're hostile to Fang Yan, but if you have a wrong understanding of a person because of this hostility, then, whether it's in the past or in the future, the person who will lose will be you. Fang Yan risked his life to accept my challenge, stood in front of me, and fought me bravely and fearlessly. How many people in Japan can do such a young talent? I know what's bothering you. You think that he used some unusual means in the process of the duel, so I lost this duel unjustly. He even threw a bomb, Chiba Haomu said with dissatisfaction. In my eyes, what's the difference between a bomb and a rock? Chiba Haomu asked in return. It's a test of a person's physical fitness and reflexes. My reaction was wrong, so he took advantage of it. That's just a tactic. Compared to that, the long sword in my hand is even more intimidating. What if Fang Yan also feels wronged? He's bare-handed, while I have a divine weapon. Isn't that unfair to him? Father is good at using swords. How can the god of swords not use a sword? The sword in my hand and the bomb Fang Yan used are just auxiliary weapons, Chiba Haomu said. Fang Yan must not have thought that he could kill me with just that bomb, but I have thought that the sword in my hand can cut off his limbs, split his flesh, and cut off his head. Compared to the bomb, the sword in my hand is more terrifying. Chiba Haomu nodded seriously and said, "Father, I understand. It's good that you understand." Chiba Haomu looked at his son with gentle eyes. You still have a long way to go, so you must be open-minded. The bigger your heart, the greater your achievements. Yes, father. Chiba Haomu bowed. Chiba Haomu sighed softly and said, "What a pity!" "What's a pity, father?" 3 dragons and 7 tigers, guarding the peace of Hua Xia. Chiba Haomu said with a face full of regret, "I only know one of them, and the others are not fated to fight." What a pity. 3 dragons and 7 tigers? They're just flattering themselves, aren't they? Don't underestimate your enemy, White Azure Dragon. Is there something wrong with this name? Chiba said with a smile. If that's the case, what is your father? Chiba only now knew that the person who fought against his father was one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia, Azure Dragon. If that was the case, he really couldn't belittle this person anymore. If that was the case, what was his father? Father, you can fight with them when you come to the capital this time, Chiba advised. Chiba chuckled and said, I hope it's not too late. It's definitely not too late, Chiba said firmly. He thought that no matter what, he would let his father fight with the 3 dragons and 7 tigers of Huaxia. For a swordsman who valued martial arts as much as his life, it would be a lifelong regret if he couldn't fight with the world's top masters. The plane stopped, and the father and son got off the plane first under the guidance of the stewardess. Walking out of the airport gate, Chiba took a breath of the cold air outside and raised his eyebrows slightly. Father, what happened? The air is too dirty, Chiba said. They didn't have to wait for long before a black car with a red flag slowly stopped in front of them. Fang Yen rolled down the window and said with a smile, Hurry up and get in the car. No parking here. Thus, Chiba and Chiba opened the door and got in. Chiba was still hostile to Fang Yen, so he didn't want to talk to Fang Yen. Chiba on the other hand, looked calm as if he didn't care about anything. Thank you, Chiba said gratefully. You're welcome, Fang Yen said. I'm not a busybody. This is what I owe you. You're a man who keeps his promise. This is the glorious virtue of our Huaxia people, Fang Yen said with a smile. That's what everyone says. Fang Yen didn't intend to take Chiba to Yanjing City. After getting off the airport highway, he drove straight in the direction of Swallow Dock. The snow on the road gradually melted, and only puddles of black water splashed by the car's tires. The wheat fields on both sides of the road also showed green shoots, weakly enduring the cold wind. Please stop by the side of the road, Chiba said. Screech. Fang Yen stopped the car nimbly and asked, Did you miss anything? No, Chiba said. Chiba opened the door and got out of the car, then walked to the middle of the wheat field. He walked very carefully, trying to avoid stepping on any green shoot. He took off his shoes and stepped on the ice and snow barefoot as if he was on a pilgrimage, seriously feeling the coldness and fertility of the land. The cold wind messed up his black hair and fluttered the corners of his clothes, but he closed his eyes comfortably. Fang Yen and Chiba stood by the side of the road, looking at his devotion to the land, and respected him even more. Chiba walked back barefoot. Chiba wanted to help him carry his shoes, but Chiba said, No need. From now on, I'll be barefooted. He pulled a handkerchief from his arms and carefully wiped the mud off his feet, then opened the door and got into Fang Yan's car. Seeing Fang Yen looking at him with a puzzled look, Chiba said with a smile, Each place nurtures its own people. Japan was an island country with strong winds and waves and frequent earthquakes. Therefore, everyone had a natural fear of nature. Their feet are unstable, and even the hand holding the sword has to be a little light. I've always wanted to experience stepping on the black soil with both feet and trusting all my strength to the land under my feet. You don't have to worry about it being bumpy, and you don't have to worry about it hurting you. You're one with the earth, and this warm and peaceful feeling is really intoxicating. Huaxia is a place with great people. Only when the land has spirituality can a large number of heroes emerge. Chiba looked at the vast land outside and said enviously, Huaxia people are blessed. Chapter 4:17. You've paid attention to the skyscrapers, you've admired the vast sea, you've admired the long river and the sunset, you've said that the green trees and red flowers are the surprise of life, you've even seen a flying insect or a snowflake, But have you ever paid attention to the land under your feet? Because it was too ordinary, it was easy to be ignored. It had been silent for millions of years and raised billions of people. That was its great power. Fang Yen was ashamed. If it weren't for the attitude of the Thousand Leaves Army, if it weren't for the love and respect he showed for this land, he would have been indifferent to the land, just like many other people. He didn't get close to it, didn't look at it carefully, and didn't release his emotions. It was like it was supposed to exist. Without experiencing strong winds and waves, without encountering earthquakes and tsunamis, without feeling the separation of life and death, and without being in a foreign country, how could he understand the true meaning of the land? The sky was the sky, and the earth was the earth. The sky was the father, and the earth was the mother. Everything in the world originated from parents. No matter how many miracles human beings created, they were just writing their legends. They were the origin of life. The spiritual space in Fang Yan's mind suddenly exploded, like a black curtain being torn apart, or like the scorching sun expelling the dark clouds above his head. The wind was gentle, and the sun was shining brightly. There was a wave of heat rolling up from the dantian of its abdomen, as if someone had placed a hot water bag there. Different from the past, this heat wave wasn't scorching. Instead, it gave people a lazy and comfortable feeling. The heart of Tai Chi rotated, and the Tai Chi field unfolded naturally. Everything in front of him changed. At the beginning, the heart of Tai Chi was three-dimensional, and the Tai Chi field was like a three-dimensional image. Birds, insects, and fish could be seen clearly, and even the slightest movement of grass could be sensed. In the fight against the Thousand Leaves Army on the top of the One-Sword Mountain, Fang Yan's heart of Tai Chi made a second breakthrough when he encountered a crisis. The original three-dimensional image became clear lines. For example, a fish became a fish-shaped line, and a flower became a flower made of flower-shaped lines. It was like a beautiful canvas that had already taken shape, had turned into a simple and crude first draft. It looked like a step backward. However, Fang Yen knew that this wasn't a regression, but an improvement. This was because he was much more sensitive to his surroundings than before, and his timing and reaction speed were also much more appropriate and swift than before. Could it be that because of Fang Yan's new understanding of the earth and nature, the heart of Tai Chi was going to make a breakthrough for the third time? Seeing that Fang Yan was still sitting in the driver's seat, Chiba Haomu was about to urge him. Chiba looked at him and gestured for him to keep quiet. Chiba Haomu didn't dare to disobey his father. He could only stare at Fang Yan in confusion. Fang Yan's expression alternated between doubt and determination. Sometimes sad, sometimes happy. As time passed, the warm current in his dantian gradually subsided. It was like a hot water bag that had been used for a long time. As the heat was taken away by the body, the hot water bag itself gradually cooled down. When the heart of Supreme Ultimate stopped, the Supreme Ultimate realm disappeared. Only then did Fang Yan wake up, his face full of regret. "Congratulations," Chiba Haomu said aloud. "Unfortunately, it's still not enough," Fang Yan said with a sigh. "I don't know where I'm lacking. I don't know when I'll have to wait for the next breakthrough. For us, climbing martial arts is much more difficult and dangerous than climbing high mountains and dangerous peaks. Some people persist for decades and only go from 0 to 1. Some people gain enlightenment overnight. Some people stand at the top of the mountain to see how beautiful the scenery is, while others stand at the foot of the mountain to see how majestic the mountains are. There are scenery at the foot of the mountain. Chiba Haomu expressed his personal opinion. It's better to have some enlightenment than no enlightenment at all. This failure will become the starting point for the next climb. One day you will stand on the mountain and look at the picturesque scenery. "Thank you," Fang Yan said gratefully. Although he was a foreigner, it was difficult for him to form the concentric seal. However, this Japanese's broad-minded and magnanimous way of doing things were admirable. If my heart of supreme ultimate realm breaks through again because of your words, then our fate is really not shallow. When I'm 100 years old, my descendants will write a book about me, and they will definitely write about you. The Grandmaster of Supreme Ultimate Fang Yen has 2 breakthroughs because of the Japanese sword god Chiba Hawu. Chiba Hawu smiled silently and said, I may not be in your letter, but you will be in mine. That's fine. Fang Yen said with a smile. Remember to sign the book and give it to me. Chiba Hawu looked at Chiba Hawu and seriously reminded him in Japanese. Chiba Hawu was stunned and angrily stared at Fang Yen and said, Father, this bastard has no good intentions, I curse you to be unlucky. Chiba Hawu waved his hand and said, Unlucky is not because of other people's curses, but the arrangement of heaven and your own choice. Take note of what I just said. Yes, Father. Chiba Hawu had to agree. I will definitely give Father's letter to him. Don't let me down. Chiba Hawu smiled gently. When the car arrived at Swallow Dock, Fang Yen took Chiba Hawu and Chiba Hawu through the back door. He knew that this was a date between Chiba Hawu and the old drunkard. The others were outsiders, and there was no need to get involved in these things. Fang Yen pushed open the door to the courtyard, and a cold air with the aroma of wine immediately hit him in the face. Chiba Hawu greedily sniffed and said with a smile, Although I don't like to drink, I can still taste that this wine is good. It is indeed good wine. Fang Yen said with a smile. He brewed it himself. Then we have to drink a big bowl, Chiba Hawu said. I just don't know if Master is willing to welcome guests with good wine. Creak. On a rattan chair under the eaves, a man in a grey robe got up. Without looking at the 3 people standing at the door, he picked up the wine pot and took a gulp, saying, Friends from afar, how can I not have good wine to welcome them? There is a bowl on the wall, wash it yourself. There is a vat on the ground, wash it yourself. Good, Chiba Hawu said with a smile. He turned to look at Fang Yen and said, I'm here. You're here. Fang Yen nodded. He promised to help him meet the old drunkard, and he did it. I'm looking forward to your future. Chiba Hawu said, I know you will become a very great person, although you are already very great right now. Thank you. Fang Yen sincerely thanked him in a low voice. You are also a very great person. What you can do, I may not be able to do. Chiba Hawu looked at Chiba Hawu, reached out to untie and tighten the white silk on his forehead, and helped him tidy up his collar like an ordinary father caring for his children. He smiled brightly and said in a gentle voice, You can forget me, but remember every word I say. Father. Chiba Hawu looked at his father in panic. Take care of mother and sister. Chiba Hawu walked into the courtyard and closed the door. Fang Yen and Chiba Hawu also wanted to go in, but they were blocked by the wooden door. Chiba Hawu's eyes were red. Fang Yen glanced at him and said, Your father, he is a very great person. Chiba Hawu stared at Fang Yen with a vicious look. He didn't understand what Fang Yen was saying. Chiba Hawu didn't use a bowl, but picked up a large vat. The mouth of the vat was facing down, and he opened his mouth to drink. After 2 or 3 mouthfuls, he coughed violently. He spat out the wine. He put the vat down and said while gasping for breath, Good wine. A very good wine. Drinking strong wine like this. A man should be like this. Chiba Hawu carried the vat to the eaves of the corridor, sat down on the ground, and reclined in the corner. He said, There is a kind of wine in the East called chrysanthemum wine. Although the name is elegant, it has a strong smell of wine. Drink it like fire, drink it and you will get drunk. There are many types of Huaxia wine, too many to count. The one that left a deep impression on me was 3 bowls. I only drank 3 bowls and I passed out. I was drunk for 3 days and 3 nights. When I woke up, I found myself sleeping on Rachel's bed. She was kneeling on the bed, and she had already cooked porridge for me. Speaking of women, we East Asian women are the most gentle, respectful, and obedient. Last time, I came and left in a hurry, so I couldn't be a good host. If there's a chance, I'll definitely take you to the most famous Peach Art Club. Drink golden wine, hold hands, and enjoy all the blessings in the world. Northern women are bold, Southern women are romantic. Sioux women are graceful, while Hunan women are passionate. The three famous clubs in Beijing, the Capital Club, the America Club, and the Chang'an Club have many beauties. There are many beauties in the north, south, east, and west, all competing for beauty, and there hasn't been a winner for thousands of years. The old drunkard didn't want to be outdone. When it comes to beauties, Huaxia is number one. That's very arrogant of you. Everyone has their own eyes. You're a fairy, and I'm an ugly woman. It's very normal. When I was young, I trained hard with the sword, and I saw a woman with the beauty of a deity. I chased her for thousands of miles, and finally, she fell in love with me. To me, beauties are like the stars, and I can pick them up with my hand. In order to challenge the Aikido master Ono Shinji, I fought his 13 disciples alone and defeated him by my sword the next morning. I fought 83 battles in a row, and won 83 battles in a row. I single-handedly swept across the East Asian continent, defeated the 12 warriors of the West and the King of Savages, and challenged the Green Dragon with undefeated might. Now, I'm the Green Dragon. The Green Dragon in white is awe-inspiring, and my sword shakes the world, and my roar shakes the 9 continents. Under my sword, who dares to challenge me? Unfortunately, you beat me to it. I heard that the 3 dragons and 7 tigers of Huaxia were guarding the peace of Huaxia. 20 years ago, I was prepared to go east and defeat them one by one, to show the might of East Asia. In the end, I killed my way there, and you were so scared that you didn't dare to go east for 20 years. Not a single warrior from East Asia dared to challenge me. At that time we were still young, and we felt that there were countless possibilities. At that time we were still young, and youth is capital. Chapter 4:18. His classmate was young and in his prime. He was full of scholarly spirit and full of vigor. He pointed out the country and inspired words. He was once a marquis of 10,000 households. Have you ever remembered that when you were in the middle of the stream, the waves stopped the flying boat? One was Emo Chingdi, one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia's 3 dragons and 7 tigers. The other was the Japanese sword god Chiba Hirobumi, who was worshipped by the martial artists of the country. The 2 of them were not talking about cultivation secrets, nor were they discussing some supreme sword techniques. They were like 2 ordinary middle-aged men, competing to see who had drunk the strongest alcohol and bragged about who had played with the most beautiful women. They were like children competing and lecturing like perverts. If the outside world knew about this, they would be shocked. However, who could understand their sad state of mind at this time? It was more like mockery than showing off, because what they were talking about was the peak of their lives that had been lost and could never return. They were like 2 injured wolf kings, snuggling up to each other to keep each other warm. Their existence itself was a kind of comfort to each other. It's been more than 20 years since we parted yesterday. The old drunkard looked leisurely, holding a wine gourd and pouring himself wine. He did not treat Chiba Hirobumi as a guest and chatted with him as if they were old friends. Although they had not seen each other for so many years, they did not feel unfamiliar. The friendship between gentlemen was as light as water. Perhaps this was the camaraderie between men. Fang Yen said you were coming. I was looking forward to your coming, but I was afraid of it. The red flowers bloomed and the green leaves withered. The cruelest thing in life is not living in a deep valley all your life, but when you climbed from the deep valley to the top of the mountain with great difficulty, only to be kicked down by someone. What's the use of seeing a disabled person? Chiba Hirobumi put down the wine jar and looked at the old drunkard. Why did you meet me again? Because of fear, said the old drunkard. When I realized that I was afraid to see you, I had to see you. I don't believe in gods and Buddhas, and I'm not afraid of ghosts and gods. How can I be afraid to see people? That's a good reason, said Chiba Hirabomi. I'm the same as you. I'm also afraid to see you. But I still want to see you. Old Drunkard took a sip of wine and didn't answer. He waited for Chiba to continue. 20 years ago I was so confident that I could conquer Huaxia, but in the end I was defeated by you single-handedly. I've been in seclusion for 20 years because I have fear in my heart. Chiba Hirabomi said. I'm not afraid of losing, I'm afraid of not being able to win. Every time I mustered up my courage and thought back to the battle at 8 Snake Mountain, there would be another voice in my heart telling me that I was very strong, but he was even stronger. You can't win. Again and again, he mustered up his courage and gave up again and again. Later, my son, Chiba Haowu, caused trouble in Huaxia and got injured. It was only then that I made up my mind to come here, not to avenge my son, but because I felt that I had to come here. Only after I personally fought with you will I know who the victor is and the difference between us. Otherwise, we can only live in fear for the rest of our lives. I understand. Old Drunkard raised his wine gourd towards Chiba Shinobu. I salute you. Old Drunkard liked to drink but never respected people. This was the first time in many years that he raised his glass. Chiba Shinobu took a sip from the wine jar, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and said, This time, I still don't have the confidence to win, but I can't continue to wait, because I'm worried that the longer I wait, the less courage I have. I'll be trapped on the island for the rest of my life and never have the chance to set foot on land. I'm glad you came. It's an honor to meet you. Old Drunkard asked, Do you want to fight again today? Today we must fight. Chiba Shinobu said firmly. He had waited for this battle for more than 20 years. He had also prepared for more than 20 years. How could he give up so easily? This was the demon that troubled him for half of his life. This was the cause and effect that motivated him to work hard. Old Drunkard laughed and said, One has lost half of his inner energy, the other has no killing intent. Why fight? To fight. Chiba Shinobu said. The battle at 8 Snake Mountain has yet to be decided, and I still feel regretful. I've always felt that you owe me one, and I also owe you one. Let's settle it today. Because you and I both know very well that after today, we won't have another chance. As you wish. Old Drunkard said. Chiba Shinobu's sturdy hand suddenly reached into the wine jar. His hand clawed hard, as if he was grabbing something. What he grabbed was the wine, the intense fire-like burning knife. The wine was shapeless, but after being wrapped by his inner energy, it actually took on the shape of a rectangular sword. The long sword was pulled into the air by him, but the wine sword in his hand didn't break. Not a single drop of wine splashed. This person's control of inner energy had reached perfection, like magic. Chiba Shinobu held the big sword in his hand and slashed towards Old Drunkard not far away. A sword that shocked the gods and split the mountains. The wine sword was like an iron sword, making a sizzling sound as it was swung. The air in front of him was split open by him. The space appeared to be distorted due to his ghostly speed and majestic power. Puff! Old Drunkard, who was sleeping on the chair, spat out the wine in his mouth. Countless streams of wine turned into countless small swords that flew towards the incoming heavy sword. Bang, bang, bang! The huge wine sword and the countless small swords collided with each other, producing a crisp sound of metal hitting stone. Pieces of the wine sword were cut off by the small swords. The falling swords immediately melted into a stream of hot water, then evaporated into nothingness. The heavy sword didn't change its direction, but its speed became more ferocious. It slashed towards Mo Qingdi with an indomitable posture. After tearing off some of the giant sword's body, the countless small swords also pierced towards the 1,000 Leaves soldier division opposite them like moths flying in a dense pack. Crack! The rattan chair Mo Qingdi was sitting on was cut in half by the wine sword. Even the green brick floor was cut into deep grooves by the sword energy. It was as easy as a knife cutting through tofu. Bang, 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 bang. Countless small swords stabbed into the wall behind Chiba Shinobu, leaving countless small holes in the pure white wall. There was a puddle of wine outside of each small hole. This was the reason why the chi inside the wine sword had completely disappeared and scattered around. Emo-Ching-di disappeared from the rattan chair, and Chiba Shinobu jumped up from the floor he was sitting on. The two of them stood in the courtyard at the same time, staring at each other. Chiba Shinobu looked at the old drunkard and sighed. If it was 20 years ago, this sword would have been able to crush my heavy sword into pieces. It will be hard to see such a spectacle again, what a pity. You only have sword energy and no killing intent. Why is that? Emo-Ching-di asked in return. A sword without killing intent, its power is only 90%. Because I don't want to kill you, Chiba Shinobu said. That's a troublesome matter. The old drunkard said. Yeah, it really is a troublesome matter. Chiba Shinobu said. Your inner energy is less than 50% of what it was back then, and your left hand could have stabbed one more time. It was very hard for me to dodge. I couldn't dodge that sword back then. Meeting is not as good as reminiscing, the old drunkard said sadly. If they couldn't fight to their heart's content, if they couldn't do their best to kill each other, then what was the point of fighting like this? What was the difference between this and children playing house? They had seen too many extraordinary things, so what they were afraid of now was this kind of dull and lifeless battle. That's right. Meeting is not as good as reminiscing, Chiba Shinobu said. You want to die? You don't want to live either. We really think the same way, Chiba Shinobu said. The two of them laughed at each other. During the fight just now, Chiba Shinobu almost killed the old drunkard, but he stopped. The old drunkard also almost killed Chiba Shinobu, but he held back. They were both despairing people, so despairing that they didn't mind dying under the sword of their most respected opponent. We should drink another vat, the old drunkard said. Chiba Shinobu refused, saying, I'll get drunk if I drink any more. Let's get down to business. Once this is over, we can drink as much as we want. Then let's get down to business first, the old drunkard said. Whoever wins will have to drink to the winner. Then I'll have to trouble you, Chiba Shinobu sincerely said. Chiba Shinobu broke off a branch from the pear tree above his head, broke off the fork on the branch, then used this crooked branch as a sword. Emo-Ching-di flicked his foot and caught a mop in his hand. With a flick of his wrist, the cloth straps on the mop flew off, turning the long stick in his hand into a spear. Take this sword of mine, Chiba Shinobu said with an extremely solemn expression. This is the sword that I've been thinking about day and night, the sword that gave me the deepest understanding in the last 20 years. I've always wanted to bring it to see you. This sword, I've named it Unintentional. Be careful. Got it, the old drunkard nodded seriously. Chiba Shinobu moved. Chiba Shinobu clearly moved, but his body was still standing in the same place. That was just his afterimage, and the ball of mystery that looked like an afterimage was the real body of Chiba Shinobu. Because his speed was too fast, it created an illusion to the eyes, creating the illusion that Shinya Shinobi was not moving at all. He thrusted his sword straight out. Thrust his sword that was made from a tree branch. It was a straight sword, a plain sword. It was like a very ordinary man holding a tree branch and stabbing it at his enemy's chest. It was not fancy, not stunning, no sound of wind and thunder, and no energy. It was just a tree branch. It was an ordinary sword thrust by an ordinary person. It looked really disappointing. However, the old drunkard couldn't help but lift his sleepy eyelids. His confused eyes were filled with light. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. It was like seeing a pile of gold or a piece of rare treasure. 10,000 swords as one. 10,000 sword techniques could be condensed into this sword, and 10,000 changes could be performed into this sword. Endless life. No change was the biggest change, because it could change in countless ways at any time. If there were no tracks, then there were no traces to be found. No sword will, no defense. After 20 years of sword comprehension, he finally thrust this sword. Chiba Shinobu deserved to be called the sword god of Japan. Chapter 419. If one's eyes were sharp enough, if one's eyes were the eyes of Emochingdi, then one would know how marvelous this sword was. At least in Emochingdi's eyes, this sword was not static and ordinary. It was not a branch, but a real sword. A peerless sword. It was trembling slightly, out of fear and excitement. Perhaps it was because of his birth. It was the sword that was trembling, not Chiba's hand that was trembling. He had stabbed out tens of millions of times. No matter what the situation was, his hand that held the sword never trembled. The body of the sword had a life of its own. It had an independent consciousness. It aimed at the old drunkard's eyebrows, eyes, throat, chest, heart, or abdomen. It could even attack the lower body of the old drunkard, piercing the 29 acupoints of the old drunkard and the 72 acupoints of the old drunkard's calf. It covered all the fatal points on the old drunkard's body, as well as all the acupoints on the old drunkard's body. The name of the sword was unintentional. In other words, at the moment of the final attack, even Chiba himself did not know where he would stab. It was only a few tenths of a second or even less. You couldn't blink, you couldn't breathe, and your heart didn't beat. The interval between one heartbeat and the next. It was shorter than that. Chiba disappeared from where he stood and stabbed at the old drunkard's throat. Yes, at the last moment, he finally locked on to the target he wanted. The throat. The sword pierced the throat. The old drunkard finally moved. The old drunkard finally moved. He rushed toward Chiba with the long stick in his hand. He left an afterimage where he stood, and his body turned into nothingness. In an ugly and barbaric manner, he raised the long stick in his hand and stabbed it towards Chiba Shinobi. The stick didn't even have a sharp spearhead. Their bodies brushed past each other. Or it could be said that two blurry shadows brushed past each other. It was just a change of position. It was just a change of the way they interacted. From standing face to face, they stood with their backs to each other. Chiba stood where the old drunkard had just stood, and the old drunkard also stood in Chiba's footprints. Then, everything became still. Their bodies gradually became clearer, and they became two living bodies, no longer a blurry shadow. The gray sky was like someone's black face, and the white world was so dreamy. Two men in loose robes with big sleeves stood in a small independent courtyard. Because of the small size of the courtyard, their figures seemed strangely tall and imposing. Just like the war gods of ancient times. The branch in Hashimoto Chiba's hand was dripping blood. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. The red blood slowly melted the snow on the ground. The chest area of the old drunkard's gray robe was dyed brown with blood. Just when the old drunkard thought that the sword would stab his throat, the thousand-leaves soldier changed his move and attacked his chest again. There were only a few people in this world who could accelerate at such a fast speed. The wooden stick in the old drunkard's hand flew away towards the wooden door of the small courtyard. Like a spear, it stuck in the middle of the wooden door. Half of the stick went in, leaving only a short section exposed in the courtyard. "Why?" the old drunkard asked in a heavy voice. 20 years ago I lost to you," Hashimoto Chiba said softly. His voice was soft and gentle, as if he was reluctant to leave and relieved. "That's the reason? 20 years later, I lost to Fong Yen. That's the reason. Huaxia is too powerful." Hashimoto Chiba sighed and said, "Huaxia is too powerful. 20 years ago, I had the ambition to conquer Huaxia with Japanese kendo and make it more powerful. Unfortunately, before I could take that step, I was forced back by you. 20 years later, I gathered the courage to go east again. The result was even worse than the last time. I was defeated by a nobody in Huaqing. Fang Yan is a genius in martial arts, and there are not many geniuses like Fang Yan in Huaxia. Even a young girl who is close to Fang Yan with her talent will not be inferior to me in the future. I still have hope after losing to you. I hope that one day, I will come back with a sword and wash away the shame with blood. But, when I saw them, I really lost all hope. There are too many talents in Huaxia, and the young people in Huaxia are too powerful. It's a pity that we don't have any young men and women like them. Not even one. God is so unfair to us. I've always been curious about what kind of magic the land of Huaxia has, how it can raise its children to be so outstanding and brave. I'm alive, they see me as a god, as the hope of Japanese martial arts. I know very well that I'm not their hope. I will only bring them illusory psychological comfort and a temporary dose of spiritual medicine. This kind of psychological comfort and spiritual medicine can deceive them, can numb them, let them still have expectations and fantasies. I believe that one day, I will bring them victory and glory. The consequences of this are too heavy. You single-handedly fought against dozens of Japanese islands, your glory was boundless, and you completely trampled on the dignity of Japanese martial arts. You made Huaxia the Green Dragon, but none of the Japanese martial arts came out. Everyone hid in their own small homes and licked their wounds. Our generation has completely lost. What about the next generation? When a young man like Fang Yan truly grows up, when he becomes an incomparably sharp sword like you, when he does what you did all those years ago, charging into the East Ocean alone with a sword, when that time comes, who among the East Ocean's youths will be able to stop him? Who can go against him? My generation has lost, bringing fear into the hearts of the young martial arts. If the next generation of martial arts loses, what kind of psychological impact will it have on the next generation of martial arts? Every time we lose, the morale will drop. After losing 3 times in a row, where will the morale be? Where will the talents be? Who will protect our people? Who will guard our country? Chiba of the army covered his throat and coughed lightly. Fresh blood dyed his palms red. Blood flowed out from the gaps between his fingers, drawing a delicate abstract picture. Don't underestimate your enemy. I really envy you, envy that you were born in the great Huaxia, envy that you have this black land under your feet, envy that you have so many talents, envy that you are proud and fearless. How good would it be if Fang Yan was from our country? How good would it be if Fang Yan was from our country? If that's the case, why would I have to walk on this path of no return? Why would it be like this? The old drunkard said with a sigh. Only when you are alive will there be hope. Only when you are alive can you see a longer future. Living is the most important thing. From the azure dragon of Huaxia to the drunkard of today, the tendons in his hand are broken, and there is no hope for him to recover. The woman you love the most has left you, sinking your heart into a swamp, and plunging you into eternal hell. Every day you are sober is a day of pain. Every time you think, you are sad. I am such a poor person, but I still live. If I were to die, I don't know how many times I would have died. You are alive because you still have hope in your heart. Chiba Hirobumi said softly. I haven't seen you for many years, but I didn't expect that my old friend, who was famous in Huaxia, would fall into such a situation. Your meridians are broken because you believe that they will break out of the cage one day. The woman you love the most has left you, because you believe that she will come back one day, or that she has always been there. There is really no hope for me to live. 20 years after another 20 years. How many more 20 years can I have? In the next 20 years, when my hair is white, will I have the courage to go east again with a sword to challenge the heroes of Huaxia? At that time, I am afraid that I can't even hold the sword steadily, right? I can't save the Japanese martial arts if I am alive. Only when I am dead can they be completely desperate. Chiba Hirobumi said with a very firm voice. He believed in the future he hoped for. Only when people are at their most desperate can they burst out with unimaginable potential. I believe in the thousands of Japanese martial arts practitioners, and I look forward to their future. I know that countless young talents like Fong Yen will grow up among them. Only then will there be the prosperity of Japan and the resurgence of Japanese martial art. Do you have any regrets? Regrets? Chiba Hirobumi thought for a moment and said, I hope that I won't be put on a pedestal by others in my next life. Because once I go up, I can never come back down. I just want to be a swordsman. Chiba Hirobumi's body slowly knelt on the ground, and then he lay flat on all fours in the snow. The wooden stick had pierced through his abdomen, leaving a pitch-black hole there. The white clothes on his body were dyed red by the blood, and the snow on the ground was also dyed red by the blood. White clothes and white snow had become red clothes and red snow. Chiba opened his eyes and looked at the sky above his head, saying, We Dongyang do not have such a land, so I will bury myself here. I will turn myself into a handful of dust here. Bless my people to have more strong men, bless the martial arts of Dongyang to prosper. Please forgive my selfishness, Chiba Hirobumi said with a chuckle. Because only dying in your hands is a true liberation for me. I forgive you, the old drunkard said gently. The strong are lonely, and Fong Yen also needs an opponent to sharpen himself. We've agreed that the winner will drink to the winner, Chiba Hirobumi said with a smile. The smile came from the bottom of his heart, warm and peaceful. The old drunkard walked to the corner, picked up a large jar, and gulped it down. His head and face were covered in alcohol, and his stomach was filled with it. He poured the remaining half of the jar next to Chiba Hirobumi's head. Chiba Hirobumi smelled the rich fragrance of the wine and closed his eyes with a gratified expression. The Japanese sword god Chiba Hirobumi had fallen. Chapter 420. Little White was Fong Hauhen's rabbit. It liked to eat vegetable leaves and corn chip. It also had a very bad habit of drinking alcohol. It liked to drink the shadaozi in the old drunkard's yard. Every time it was Fong Hauhen's turn to bring food and soup to his master or help his master clean up the yard, he would bring Little White over to have a sumptuous meal. At that time, it would drink the shadaozi in the yard as it pleased. Every time, it would lie on the ground drunk and be carried back by Fong Hauhen like a little drunkard. Today, as usual, Fong Hauhen carried Little White over to help his master clean up the house. He also gave the alcoholic Little White a small plate of shadaozi to celebrate its growth of 1 year. Suddenly, he saw Chiba Haowu standing at the entrance of his master's yard. Fong Hauhen's face was full of vigilance. He immediately rushed to the entrance of the yard, stared at Chiba Haowu, and shouted, Chiba Haowu, what are you doing here? Seeing that Fong Hauhen was full of hostility towards him, Chiba Haowu immediately put on a posture that made it seem like he would counterattack at any time. All right. Fong Yen waved his hand and said, Why are you pretending to be a loyal and filial son? I'm standing here. If they want to do something bad, how can I let them in? Fong Hauhen chuckled. Both sides of his cheeks were deeply sunken. Even if the skin on his entire face was cut off, it would still be less than 2 ounces. Fong Hauhen walked in front of Fong Yen and whispered, Junior Marshal Uncle, these 2 Japanese. Slap? Fong Yen slapped him on the head and said angrily, He doesn't understand Hua-Xia language. You don't have to speak so sneakily. Oh, then I'm relieved. Fong Hauhen breathed a sigh of relief and said, Why did they come to our swallow dock? Aren't they looking for trouble? I'm going to ring the alarm bell at the entrance of the village, and get everyone to come and wrap them up like dumplings. They've all come to our doorstep and into our yard. Aren't they bullying us? Shut up, Fong Yen said. Do you know what it means by heroes cherishing heroes? I know. In Fong Yingying's eyes, the most awesome person is Fong Yingying. This is what they mean by heroes cherishing heroes. Pa. Fong Yen slapped Fong Hauhen's head again. It was impossible to explain things to these two little bastards. Fong Haohan dodged with the rabbit in his arms and said in a wrong tone, "I didn't say anything wrong. It's not like you don't know the condition of Master's body. They came here to show off. Aren't they just making things difficult for Master? What does Master care about the most?" What he was most concerned about was that his meridians were severed, and there was no way for him to return to his peak state. If that old man, who was always pretending to be mysterious, challenged Master, with Master's temperament, he would definitely not refuse. What was this? When a tiger falls to the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. If he's so capable, let him fight you. Fong Yen knew that Fong Haohan was worried about the safety of the old drunkard, and the possibility of what he said was very high. Moreover, didn't the Chiba army come all the way here to finish the unfinished battle in the past? If the Chiba army challenged the old drunkard would definitely not refuse. Just like when Fong Yen was challenged by the Chiba army, although he was scared to death, even if he really had to die, he would not refuse. Some things had nothing to do with life and death, but with dignity. In the past, the old drunkard used to drown his sorrows with alcohol. If he was forced by external forces, the old drunkard would probably die to drown his sorrows. Such a proud man, such a glorious hero, had fallen into such a situation. Perhaps living was more of a torture than dying, right? However, even knowing this answer, Fong Yen still did not stop the two of them from meeting. Because, except for the old drunkard himself, no one was qualified to make such a decision for him. For such a man, what they needed the most was understanding and respect, not protection and pity. Fong Yen looked at Fong Haohan and said, "Is there any use in stopping them?" "No." Fong Haohan shook his head. "Then stand aside and pray," said Fong Yen. Fong Haohan stared at Chiba Haohan unkindly and said, "Since we have nothing to do, why don't I beat him up? Who asked his father to challenge my master?" Fong Yen glanced at Chiba Haohan and said, "Whatever." The person he respected was the Chiba army, and as for this guy, he really did not have a good impression of him. He also knew that Chiba Haohan did not have a good impression of him either. If the opportunity was ripe, maybe this guy would stab him with a knife. Fong Yen was on guard against him. In the end, Fong Haohan did not challenge Chiba Haohan, because just as he was about to do so, he heard the sound of wood breaking in the yard. "They've started fighting," said Fong Haohan anxiously. He hugged Little White tightly in his arms, like an ugly little girl who had been frightened. It would be difficult to find a woman uglier than Fong Haohan. Chiba Haohan also heard the sound, and did not have time to guard against Fong Haohan's possible sneak attack from behind. He quickly ran to the wooden door, wanting to look through the gap. Fong Yen took a step forward and pulled him aside from the door. If the two men inside were to kill each other, this small yard would be torn apart by them in minutes. Even a branch or leaf flying out from inside could kill someone. Chiba Haohan ran to the door and lay down, and if he was not careful, he would be killed. To be honest, Fong Yen really did not care about Chiba Haohan's life, because he had always felt that this guy was too narrow-minded and evil. However, if Chiba Haohan came out and found his son dead, would he suspect him of being the culprit? It would not be good to cause such a misunderstanding. After a few noises, there was no more movement in the yard. Fong Haohan looked at Fong Yen, and Chiba Haohan also looked at Fong Yen. Fong Yan's expression was solemn, but he did not say anything. He could feel the murderous aura in the yard, and the situation did not seem right. Thinking of all the strange things that happened when Chiba Haohan came, Fong Yen had a very bad feeling. These two people were not going to fight to the death, were they? Fong Yen became anxious and hesitated whether he should push open the wooden door and force his way in. Creak. The wooden door opened from the inside. The old drunkard stood at the door and first glanced at Chiba Haohan, then said to Fong Yen, "Japanese sword god Chiba Haohan, died in battle. Father, Chiba Houhan had already seen his father's body lying in the snow on the ground and miserably threw himself over. Fang Yan's expression was gloomy as he looked at Chiba Houhan's serene face after his death. He was alive and well just a moment ago, but now he had become a corpse without breathing or a heartbeat. Life was impermanent, that was all. She recalled the first time they met. She recalled their battle at One Sword Peak. She recalled how he suddenly jumped up and pushed her away to avoid the shots of those flying people. She recalled how he stood under the osmanthus tree in the courtyard in his white robe. She also recalled how he asked her to stop the car by the roadside and run into the wheat field like a child. She then stepped on the cold black soil with her bare feet. "Father!" Chiba Houhan put his hand on the wound on his father's stomach, but no matter how hard he tried, the blood kept gushing out. Not only from the front, but from the back as well. The large piles of snow in the yard were melted by the warm blood, and the melted ice and blood mixed together, forming even more ice water. The ice water soaked Chiba Houhan's body like a natural hotbed. As the blood from Chiba Houhan's body kept gushing out, the color of the ice water became thicker and thicker. The yard was filled with the smell of blood. Chiba Houhan saw the branch in his father's hand, so he grabbed it and charged at the old drunkard who was drinking from a wine jar in the corner. "I'm going to kill you!" Chiba Houhan yelled, looking a little hysterical. He was going crazy. He was going crazy. He never thought that he would encounter something like this while accompanying his father to visit a friend in Beijing. The man who was like a god of war in his heart, the undefeated hero, was lying in a pool of blood like his previous opponents. How could he die? How could he die? He was the Japanese god of war, his most powerful father. All this time, he had been under his father's care and protection. He was arrogant because his father was the Japanese god of swords. He worked hard because his father was the Japanese god of sword. He always felt that he still had a lot of time. Under his father's guidance and protection, he would definitely be able to achieve as much as his father, perhaps even more dazzling than his father. But why was his father suddenly gone? It was this man who took his father away. He wanted to kill him, he had to kill him, whoosh. He was only halfway there when a large jar of wine suddenly poured over his head. The cold wine drenched his clothes and messed up his hair. Even the white silk tied around his forehead loosened and was about to fly away. Most importantly, it froze him from head to toe and sobered him up. His eyes turned blood-red, and he stared unblinkingly at the old drunkard. His breathing was rapid, but his body seemed to have been immobilized, unable to move at all. The old drunkard didn't get angry. He looked at him expressionlessly and said, "You are a lucky guy because you have a great father. You are also a tragic guy because your father is too great." Chiba still stared unblinkingly at the old drunkard. He seemed to understand what the old drunkard said, but it also seemed like he didn't understand anything. The old drunkard shifted his gaze to Fang Yan and said, "He wants to stay and let his body become a pile of dust in Huaxia. If he wants to see the vastness and depth of Huaxia, then let him have a good look. If he wants to use his feet to measure the courage and foundation of Huaxia, then let him have a good look. Let him wear my shroud, live in my coffin, and enter my tomb, a grand burial." Chapter 421. According to the customs of the villagers, it was a very inauspicious thing to hang a white banner in the first month. However, to the people of Swallow Dock, it was nothing out of the ordinary. On the eve of the Lunar New Year's Eve, the family would gather together to eat, drink, and happily welcome the new year. Then, they would receive a call from the northern borderline or the southern sea. Their family members had unfortunately died in battle. Everyone would silently put down their bowls, chopsticks, and wine glasses, and raise the white flags that had been prepared under the boxes. They believed that the white banners could summon souls. They couldn't retrieve the corpses of their loved ones, and most of the time, they couldn't even retrieve their ashes. However, they hoped that they could summon the souls of their loved ones back to their roots so that they could meet in their dreams. Sacrifice was the norm. However, this was the first time Swallow Dock had raised the white banner for a foreigner, and it was for an East Asian at that. Qianye Bin died in battle. According to his last words, he hoped that he would stay in Huaxia and let his body turn into a pile of dust. The old drunkard gave Fang Yan full authority to handle this matter. He also gave his shroud, coffin, and tomb to the Thousand Leaves military department. Yes, making burial clothes, making coffins, and reserving graves for the living was also an ancient tradition of Swallow Dock. Moreover, only the most respected person in the family would receive such preferential treatment and glory. These people could enter the ancestral mountain after they died, and their spirit tablets could be placed in the family's ancestral hall. Now, the old drunkard had given this honor to the Thousand Leaves military department. Of course, the memorial tablet of the Thousand Leaves military department could not be placed in the Fang family's ancestral hall. Everyone was worried that the Qianye division of the army would fight with the ancestors of the Fang clan after they entered. After all, everyone's habits and way of thinking were still very different. Fang Yan conducted the funeral for Qianye and hung white banners on the tallest camphor tree in the courtyard of the Fang family. Bai Huwei personally wrote an elegiac couplet for Hero Bai to hang on the door. A foreign guest from the Chiba army, a hero of heaven and earth, the Japanese sword god. Fang Yixing led Fang Hao, Zhao Qingxin and the rest to slaughter pigs and sheep, preparing for the feast. The old drunkard said he would give him a proper burial, so naturally, the Fang family would give him a proper burial. Banquets were an essential part of a grand funeral. Whenever there was a wedding or a funeral, the villagers had to be invited to have a good meal. The more extravagant and lively the banquet, the more it could be called a funeral. This was no different from the outside world. At the door of the small house, the teacher was holding a big teacup and looking in the direction of the Fang family. He asked, "What's the matter with the Fang family?" The Japanese sword god Chiba came to Swallow Dock to challenge Mo Qinglong and died in battle. After his death, he left his last words, hoping that he could be buried in Huaxia and become a pile of dust in the earth. The Fang family is currently preparing for his funeral. Bai Xiu, who was standing behind him, replied softly. "How much power have you recovered from underestimating the enemy?" The teacher asked. "Less than 50%. How powerful is the Thousand Leaves army?" 20 years ago they were evenly matched. After 20 years of comprehending the sword, the swordsmanship of the Chiba military division had become even more refined. 10,000 swords become one. He was almost invincible in East Asia. Those who saw the battle with Fang Yan at one sword peak said that he was a very terrifying opponent. If it weren't for Fang Yan's sudden breakthrough in his Taiji heart, it would have been very difficult for him to win this match. In that case, how did Mo Qingdi defeat Qianye Bing, who was at his peak condition with less than half of his strength? He came to seek death, Bai Xiu said with a sigh. The Fang family values kinship and righteousness. They did a good job. The teacher pondered for a long time and said, "Hang my white banner." "Mr." Bai Xiu stopped him. If the teacher hung the white banner, the death of the Thousand Leaves army would become a big deal for the entire Swallow Dock. "Hang it!" The teacher waved his hand and said firmly. "Mr. hung the white banner." Fang Yingying ran to Fang Yan and said while panting. "The Yi family hung the white banner." Fang Haohan moved to Fang Yan and whispered. "The Li family hung the white banner." The Ruan family hung the white banner. The entire Swallow Dock was full of white banners. The Fang family hung the white banner because of the deep relationship between the old drunkard and the Thousand Leaves army, and also because Fang Yan and the Thousand Leaves army were both enemies and friends. The teacher hung the white banner because he deduced the truth from some unusual information. Heroes cherished heroes. How could the teacher's action not be a hero's? The other villagers of Swallow Dock hung the white banner, because they began to pay attention to this matter and learned about it. Then, they respected and admired this foreign guest from the bottom of their hearts. Perhaps when they met on the battlefield, they would engage in a bloodthirsty fight to the death. However, this did not affect their favorable impression of their opponent, because they were the same kind of people. If they were not the same kind of people, why would they meet in such a dangerous place? If they weren't the same kind of people, why would they give up their lives for a goal that seemed to be empty and meaningless? They could also live in a prosperous city like thousands of people, find a comfortable job, marry a beautiful wife, and have a few lovely children. With their abilities, they could live a more comfortable and safe life. But why did they meet on the battlefield? The news of the death of the Thousand Leaves Army's father spread to Huaqing, and Huaqing spread the news of the Thousand Leaves Army's death to the IGA One-Blade School. The IGA One-Blade School spread the news of the Thousand Leaves Army's death to the entire East Ocean and the even more distant world of martial artists. In the dojo of the IGA One-Blade School, a long-bearded man with black silk tied around his head was silent. Several rows of young martial artists sitting across from him looked at the middle-aged man with serious expressions. Everyone, the king of our IGA One-Blade School, the sword god of East Ocean, Mr. Chiba Abe challenged one of the three dragons of Huaxia, the Azure Dragon. Don't underestimate him, and unfortunately, he died in the battle, the black-bearded man said in a hoarse voice. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were clenched tightly. Boom! The crowd was in an uproar. Mr. Chiba Abe, did he really die? Impossible. How could our sword god be defeated by their Azure Dragon? He is invincible, it's impossible. He killed our sword god, we will fight him to the death. I don't want to believe it either, but this is the truth that I know. This is a disgrace to our IGA One-Blade School, and a disgrace to all East Ocean martial artists. The man happened to lead the young martial artists into an emotional outburst. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Please practice hard, everyone, and in the future, our blood will flow in the Azure Dragon. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Sokka One-Blade School. On the spacious dojo, a white-robed old man angrily stated this fact. Although Chiba Abe is from the IGA sect that is our competitor, the East Ocean martial artists are one family. They were bound together for glory and bound together for shame. The Azure Dragon of Huaxia killed our East Ocean martial artists, and if we don't avenge him, we will be in vain as human beings. Everyone, please work hard, and we will challenge the Azure Dragon in the future to avenge Chiba Abe. Revenge! 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 The black-robed swordsmen waved the machetes in their hands and shouted at the top of their lungs. At the foot of Yamasaki Mountain, Koga Clan Ninja Village, two men sat opposite each other in a simple thatched hut. One was a middle-aged man in black with several scars on his face, and the other was a skinny old man. It was hard to tell his age, but he was too old. His skin was so loose that it looked like it was about to fall off. His teeth had all fallen out, and it was difficult for him to even open his eyes. Chiba Abe has fallen. This is the death of U.S. East Ocean martial artists. The bald man said angrily. Chiba Abe has always been the totem of U.S. East Ocean martial artists, and also the hero in our hearts. Now that he has also died in the hands of the Azure Dragon of Huaxia, our ninja clan can't turn a blind eye. I will go to Huaxia to challenge the 3 dragons and 7 tigers. If I win, it will prove that we East Ocean martial artists are not weak. If I lose, then let me die on the battlefield. The old man opened his eyes with difficulty, and his loose eyelids almost covered most of his pupils. He carefully looked at the bald man in front of him and said, "Kakuto-kun, it's good that you can make such a choice. You are indeed the pride of us Koga ninjas. As a jonin, you need to stand up in times of crisis like this. Go and see their 3 dragons and 7 tigers. I look forward to your return. At that time, I will personally crown you as the king of ninjas. Even if you die in battle, isn't it a kind of glory? Chiba Abe walked a path that no one has taken before, and he made a choice that we don't have the courage to make. He is a hero, the soul of our country. You too. The bald man knelt on the ground, kowtowed 3 times, and turned to leave without saying a word. Clang. The door closed, and the oil lamp in the room went out with a whoosh. Do you know? Our East Ocean Sword God died in battle in Huaxia. God, I really can't accept it. Huaxia has 3 dragons and 7 tigers, and each of them is a 1 in a million master. Azure Dragon, don't underestimate your enemy. 20 years ago, he broke into East Ocean alone with a sword and fought dozens of East Ocean masters. He didn't stop conquering until he met Chiba Abe, who was equally young and talented. If it wasn't for Chiba Abe, if it wasn't for our East Ocean Sword God, all of our East Ocean martial artists would have been trampled under his feet. East Ocean swordsman, do you have the guts? Do you still have any passion? If you are not a group of cowards, then go and seek justice for our sword god. Kill Azure Dragon, avenge. Chiba Abe's death provoked the anger and hatred of the entire East Ocean martial arts world. One after another, dojos and sects stood up. They hung Chiba Abe's portrait at the door of the dojo, and they swore to avenge the sword god. Chiba Abe became a god. After the sword god, there was no more sword god. Chapter 422. That night, several disciples of Chiba's battalion escorted his wife and daughter, Chiba Kaori, to Beijing. Chiba Kaori's wife was called Ozawa Wakako. She was a respectful, gentle, and beautiful woman. Chiba Kaori's good looks were inherited from her. She treated the Fong family very calmly. After bowing to express her gratitude, she knelt next to her husband's body and wiped his face with a silk handkerchief over and over again. Chiba Kaori bowed to Fong Yen, then knelt together with her brother, Chiba Haomu, and burned incense for their father. The beautiful and carefree girl's face was pale, and she looked unusually haggard. It was obvious that her father's death had hit her hard. It was only because of her excellent upbringing that she put away her weak and worthless tears in front of outsiders. Phantom and the other disciples became Fong Yan's right-hand men, and they did whatever Fong Yan asked them to do. There was no ill will between the two parties, as if the death of Chiba Kaori had nothing to do with the Fong family. It had nothing to do with me. Fong Yen lay on the rattan chair that the old drunkard often used. He held a big bowl in his hand and drank a mouthful of wine. He really wanted to drink today, so he naturally came to the old drunkard. If we think about it carefully, the Fong family is the one who suffered the most, right? Chiba Kaori, that sly old man, lost his will to win, and he was worried about the future of the Japanese martial artists, so he came up with such a lousy move to help himself and Japan. If the news that the Japanese sword god died in your hands spreads to Japan, you will become their public enemy, and the Fong family will become their enemy. I'm afraid that every Japanese martial artist will have a new goal when they practice swordsmanship: to learn the divine skill and kill the Azure Dragon. Tell me, what are we after? The old drunkard stood in the courtyard with a wine gourd in his hand. He kept drinking, but he didn't answer Fong Yan's questions. He used his death to awaken the Japanese martial artists' desire to work hard, and used your hands to ignite their hatred. We respect him, and I do think he's a good person. But can a good person plot against others? Why? We didn't get anything. He didn't even give me $100. But we've done so many things for him, and made ourselves the target of a country. Aren't we being too kind? We know it's not good for us, but we can't not do it. We have to do it. Why do I feel so upset? If I were to find him, he would do the same, old drunkard said in a dull voice. He was silent for a long time before he suddenly spoke. This made Fang Yen feel that the voice did not come from his mouth, but someone else was talking to them. Are you that confident? You don't believe me? Fang Yen thought about it seriously and said, he is indeed such a person. On the way back to pick him up, I suddenly realized something. Then, he stood by my side and guarded me carefully. He was worried that I would be in danger. If he had taken action at that time, I wouldn't have stood a chance. However, I wasn't worried at all. I'm a narrow-minded guy. Since when did I trust someone so much? But his son's emotions were very unstable. There were several times when I wanted to take action, but he stopped me with his eyes. I should have been the one to die, old drunkard said. You've never said something like that before, Fang Yen advised seriously. He didn't want old drunkard to die, even if he knew it would be crueler for him to live. But wouldn't there be nothing left after death? In the past, I thought I still had hope. Just like what he said, I hoped that I could find myself again and return to my best state. I hoped that she would always be there and never leave. So, I kept waiting. But now, I'm a little tired of waiting, and I'm tired of drinking. So, I want to die. I don't know what death is like. Maybe it's more interesting than living? I don't know either, Fang Yen said. But, if you die, you won't have a chance to prove that you can return to your original glory. You also can't believe that she has always been there and never left. Also, Dragon God has a tough life. You can't just let him break your tendons, right? When there's a chance to take revenge, you still have to beat him up in front of everyone. Even if you don't care about any of this and let it go. What about me? Have you let me go as well? Old drunkard thought about his words for a long time, but found that he still didn't know how to answer Fang Yan's question. What do you mean I've let you go? When did I ever carry you? Besides, if he dies, you have to live, Fang Yan angrily said. You owe so much, you've pulled the hatred of an entire country's martial artists. If you die, won't they come after me for revenge? My skin is thin and my flesh is tender. How could I be their match? Old drunkard was speechless for a long time. Standing in the middle of the courtyard with the gourd in his hand, he even forgot to drink. Crack! Old drunkard suddenly exerted force, crushing the gourd in his hand into pieces. He lifted a large jar and gulped down a mouthful of wine. Then, he swung the large jar and smashed it at the other jars. Clang! The two jars collided with each other, making a loud noise. He picked up the second vat and smashed it towards the other vat. Then the third jar smashed into even more jars. Clang, 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 clang. Old drunkard smashed all the jars in the courtyard. Even the new wine he brewed on New Year's Eve was smashed. Stop drinking, old drunkard breathed out like a sword and shouted. When old drunkard smashed the jars, Fang Yen understood what he wanted to do. Obviously, Qianye's death had greatly affected old drunkard. Someone didn't hesitate to die to fulfill his wish, so how could the torture he was suffering compare to that? But he didn't cheer, nor would he help. He wanted to watch helplessly as the old drunkard personally smashed these wine jars, personally smashed the new and old wine he brewed, personally smashed his current rotten and tattered life into pieces. He's been drowning for too long, he should have been reborn a long time ago. Until all the jars in the courtyard were smashed, the tiles were broken, and the wine was spilled all over the courtyard. Even the air was filled with the strong smell of burning knives, making one feel intoxicated. Good, 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 Fang Yen shouted good 3 times in a row. He jumped up from his chair and said, I knew this day would come, I've been waiting for this day. I knew you would stand up again, I knew you would soar to the sky. I knew it would be like this. The humiliation of one person is better than the humiliation of a family, and the humiliation of a family is better than the humiliation of a country. I know that the news of this battle has the effect of gathering the ambition of the Japanese martial artists and provoking their hatred. But what's there to be afraid of? Mo Qingdi ignored Fang Yan's flattery and went into an invincible performance. If I could challenge the 36 islands of the East Ocean and fight 36 East Ocean people by myself, then I can challenge the 36 islands of the East Ocean and fight 36 East Ocean people by myself again. 20 years ago, I could defeat Sword God once, then I can defeat Sword God again. 20 years later, I can kill Sword God once, then I can kill Sword God again. From now on, no one in Japanese will dare to call themselves Sword God. Fang Yen was so excited that his body was trembling, unable to control himself. Just listen, what's heroic spirit? What's heroic spirit? What's a perfect example of acting cool? From a certain point of view, Fang Yen isn't even fit to carry the old drunkard's shoes. Fang Yen was very excited, but also very self-conscious. He drank the liquor in his bowl in one gulp and loudly cheered. That's how a man should be, to match the old drunkard's heroic spirit, to match the current atmosphere. Fang Yen even sang a war song. This was a song the old drunkard taught him when he was young. Boiling blood like the waves in the river, like the waves in the sea, always stirring my heart just because the humiliation hasn't been cleared. Fang Yen sang with a high spirit, his blood vessels swelled, he sang with passion, he sang with a sense of self-satisfaction. The old drunkard waited for him to finish, then happily said, "It's good that you have such ambition. The things I mentioned, I'll leave them to you from now on. If I can do it, so can you," the old drunkard said. After that, he turned around and walked into the house. From now on, he would no longer sleep on the reclining chair under the eaves of the corridor or in a corner. Fang Yen stood alone in the wind and snow, his expression a little sad and melancholy. The Chiba Ministry of War was buried in peace. Ghost Shadow brought his wife Ozawa Wakako, Chiba Keru and Chiba Haumu to thank the Fang family. After hearing about the deeds of the Chiba Ministry of War, Lu Wan respected this family very much and was full of sympathy for Ozawa Wakako. She took Ozawa Wakako's hand and said a lot of comforting words. Someone next to her helped translate. Ozawa Wakako expressed her gratitude and bowed to Lu Wan again and again. In the end, she bowed so much that Lu Wan didn't dare to speak. Chiba Haumu stared at Fang Yen fiercely and firmly. After bowing deeply to him, he said, "I will definitely defeat you." Slap. Fang Yen slapped Chiba Haumu's head. After that, he slapped Chiba Haumu's shoulder again and again. With a sad expression, he said in a heavy voice, "You are a good boy. Don't have too much psychological pressure. Your father is gone, but your uncle is still here. In the future, I will take on the responsibility and obligation of educating you. I believe that you will become an excellent swordsman, just like your father." Chiba Haumu's face turned red because of Fang Yan's slaps, but he couldn't lose his temper, because everything the interpreter said seemed to be for his own good. Chapter 423. The sky was bright, but because of the cold weather, the snow on the ground was still hard and squeaky when one stepped on it. Fang Yen accompanied Chiba Keru on a small road in the countryside. The two of them were silent. They could only hear each other's breathing and the sound of the snow under their feet. Chiba Keru was dressed in plain clothes and looked exhausted. There were wrinkles on her knees from kneeling for a long time, and there were some ashes on her hair. The past 2 days had really tormented the girl. She hadn't even taken a hot shower until now. "Are all men like this?" Chiba Keru suddenly asked. Although she could already communicate in the Hua-Xia language after a long period of hard work, there were still some obstacles when it came to talking about things that were too profound. Therefore, she spoke very slowly. It was as if she was trying very hard to articulate her words. "What?" Fang Yen thought about it a few times before he understood her question. If there's a big country, there's no small family? If there's justice, there's no personal feelings? Chiba Keru asked with reddened eyes. There were many things that she couldn't understand, so she asked her teacher alone. Fang Yen was her language teacher, and also the homeroom teacher of Class 9. Fang Yen was silent. It was too difficult to answer. Mr. Fang, is my father really a good person? Chiba Keiru asked. Yes, Fang Yen said firmly. He had to give a definite answer. Otherwise, the death of Chiba Keiru would be meaningless. If he couldn't get the forgiveness of his beloved daughter, what was the point of being loved by the whole country? He's a good person and a great person. Then, Mr. Fang, will you be like him? For the country, for justice, you'll sacrifice yourself. You won't care about your wife's loneliness, your children's sorrow, and you'll say goodbye to them forever without saying goodbye? Fang Yen thought for a long time and answered honestly, I can't do it. I'm too greedy. I want to grow old with my wife. I want to be the guardian of my daughter forever. I want to take care of my parents and the old drunkard when they die. So, I won't choose that way. Chiba Kaori stopped and looked at Fang Yen. She smiled silently, like a chrysanthemum blooming quietly in the wind. Mr. Fang, thank you for your answer, Chiba Kaori said softly. As wives, they hope to have a husband who will never leave them. As children, they want a father who can lean on them. My father was great, but he wasn't a good husband, a good father. Fang Yen wanted to say something to comfort her, but it seemed that all words had lost their power. Don't try to comfort me, because all consolation is useless. Sadness has always been a personal thing. Chiba Kaori saw through Fang Yan's hesitant expression and took the initiative to say, My father is gone, and my mother is going back to China. My brother will also go back. In Japan, he will receive guidance from the seniors in the dojo. My father's death will make him mature, and I believe that he will definitely become an outstanding swordsman. I will stay in Huaxia to accompany my father. Perhaps his soul has already reached Japan, to the place he fought for his entire life, to the Pheasant Mountain where he diligently practiced his swordsmanship every morning and night. But, his body is still buried here. I want to stay and accompany him. He wasn't a good father, but I still love him as much as before. Will you return to Rosefinch? Fang Yen asked. Chiba Kaori shook her head and said, No. I knew it, Fang Yen sighed softly. Chiba Kaori was an outstanding student and a hard-working one. Because she had just arrived and had a language barrier, she had to understand the meaning of the words before she learned any subject. She had been at the bottom of the class for the previous few exams, but she was already above average for the final exam. Any responsible teacher would not want to lose a good student in their class. Mr. Fang, I don't hate you. I didn't leave Rosefinch because I hate you, Chiba Kaori said. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid that every time I go to class, I will think of my father when I see you. Until now, I still can't accept the fact that he has left. I can't bear that kind of suffering, and I'm worried that it will make me break down. I will leave Rosefinch, and I won't enter any other school. I will learn something that interests me in the future, and my favorite is the tea ceremony. I think that's what my father is happy to see. He wants me to focus on what I like, and I always feel that I still have a lot of time. Fang Yen looked at Chiba Kaori with sincerity and said, I respect your choice. We won't be teacher and student in the future, but we will still be friends. If you need anything, just come to me. No, you will always be my teacher, Chiba Kaori said seriously. People in Huaxia believe that a teacher for a day is a father for life. You are my teacher for a day, and you will always be my teacher. I understand everything you have done for my father. Perhaps Chiba Haowu doesn't understand it now, but he will one day. He will know how magnanimous he must be to be able to help his opponent like this. She bowed deeply to Fang Yen, then jogged toward the dojo. There, her mother, brother, and Phantom were waiting to leave Swallow Dock with her. They would stay in Huaching for a short while, then fly to Japan from there. To them, it was a sad country. Her figure was thin, and her long hair was flying. Her back view was so desolate and sorrowful. She was smart, beautiful, and a girl who had lost her father. Fang Yen couldn't bear to look at her anymore, so he looked in another direction. "Hey, are you dumbfounded?" a girl with a rosy face shouted at him. No matter how bad the haze was, the sudden sight of two bright and beautiful faces would immediately brighten one's mood. This was a common problem for men. Two beautiful girls appeared in front of Fang Yen. One was wearing a white shirt, white pants, and a pair of white sports shoes. It was Yi Wen, whom he hadn't seen for a few days. The other one was Leaf, who was wearing a red down jacket, white jeans, and a pair of black leather boots. They were both young and beautiful. One was elegant and the other was cute. They were both beautiful. Seeing Fang Yen looking at them without saying anything, Yi shouted impatiently, "Hey, I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me? I didn't expect such a beautiful girl to like such a shameless man. There are so many idiots nowadays." Yi obviously misunderstood the relationship between Fang Yen and Chiba Keiru, and regarded Chiba Keiru's action of running away as Fang Yan's heartless betrayal of girls. Yi started her studies in Swallow Dock. Because her parents worked in Yanjing for a long time, she transferred her school registration to Yanjing City. Although she lived in Yanjing City, she often went to Swallow Dock. Her growing up was almost the history of Fang Yan's cheap deeds. The competition between her cousin Yi Ro and Fang Yen every year was the biggest drama of the year that she looked forward to the most. She had watched the competition between Yi Wen and Fang Yen since she was 5 or 6 years old, and now she had grown up watching the competition between Yi Wen and Fang Yen. As a result, she had seen Fang Yan's ugly face, all kinds of shameless expressions, all kinds of funny ways of begging for mercy, and all kinds of ways of running away. This almost subverted her outlook on life and values. Until now, she was still wondering why a man could have such a shameful side. Therefore, she wasn't talking nonsense when she said that Fang Yen was a shameless man. It was the result of watching the competition for 10 years. Moreover, because she was the most hardcore audience, she gnashed her teeth at Fang Yan's behavior every time. She was sharp-tongued and liked to sneer at Fang Yen. Fang Yen was not a man who was willing to suffer losses, and his way of fighting back made her so angry that her liver hurt. In the competition before the new year, Fang Yen ran away, which made her extremely angry. How could such a guy with no chivalry be her sister's opponent? Fang Yen was a little angry and said, "You can scold me for being shameless, but don't scold your sister. What's wrong with her liking me?" In terms of eloquence, 10 Yezi were not as good as 1 Fang Huahua. Sure enough, Yezi was ashamed and annoyed. She said angrily, "How can you be so shameless? I'm not talking about my cousin. My sister doesn't like you." "How do you know your sister doesn't like me? What if she likes me? You said that those who like me are idiot. Isn't that calling your sister an idiot?" Fang Yen said to Yi Wen, who looked calm and indifferent, as if she didn't care about anything. "Of course I know. How could I not know?" Yezi reached out and took Yi Wen's arm, saying, "My sister is such an excellent, elegant, and beautiful woman. How could she like a man with no taste, no looks, and a vicious mouth like you? Do you think my sister is blind? Only the person involved knows about this kind of thing. What right do you, an outsider, have to say such things? Okay, then I'll let the person involved tell you personally." Yezi turned around and took Yi Wen's arm, saying, "Sister, tell him. Do you not like him?" Yi Wen looked at Yezi in silence. "Sister, just tell him." Yezi showed her divine skill of acting coquettishly again. The girls of Swallow Dock didn't know how to act coquettishly, but they knew how to roll up their sleeves and fight. Yezi had lived in Yanjing City for a long time, so she learned this powerful skill. She shook her petite body and said, "Sister, say something. Say something. I want him to be convinced of his defeat." "I like him," Yi Wen said softly. In an instant, the wind stopped, the clouds dispersed, and everything was still. Chapter 424. How could he do this? How could he do this? For no reason, inexplicable and sudden. Why did he suddenly confess to her? Fang Yan's face was flushed, and his heart was beating fast. His hands became redundant for no reason. It was wrong to put them in front of his chest, in his pocket, and even put them vertically on both sides of his trouser leg. Fang Yan was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. Where should he put his hands? Where did he put them before? He wasn't mentally prepared at all. How could she like him? How could she like him? She was such a proud woman. She was such a lonely woman. She was such a violent woman. She beat herself up again and again, year after year. She wanted to die. She was a violent woman who had a mouth to eat but no face to see others. Fang Yan was not a fool. He could feel that Yi Gentle treated him differently from others. Whether it was when she received Fang Yingxiong's call and beat him up in front of all the students in Huaqing, or when she single-handedly challenged the Japanese sword god Chiba, she was always on his side. However, this was the style of Swallow Dock, and this was what the people of Swallow Dock should do. Just like him and Bailey Liu, the two of them would fight and kill each other when they met. If one of them was in danger or in trouble, the other would definitely fight hard to save him. Some people said that on the battlefield, the one you could entrust your back to was your brother. But in Swallow Dock, you could leave your back completely defenseless to everyone else. Oh, except for Bai Xiu. Except for Kai Dongxing. Except for Chun Keida and Li Guangwen and Gu Kite. These people either snatched Fang Yan's woman or Fang Yan's limelight. Anyway, he didn't like them. Bai Xiu snatched Fang Yan's woman and Fang Yan's limelight. Every time he saw him, he wanted to beat him up. He felt that he and Yi Rou were confidants and friends who had a tacit understanding. Why did they have a tacit understanding again? Why did he have this feeling when facing Qin Etian? Or could it be that, as long as it was a beautiful girl, Fang Huohuo would have a tacit understanding with them? Fang Yan was very distressed. He felt that he should find more girls to test if he could communicate with all the beautiful girls. More than friends, but not lovers. He felt that this was the true state of Yi Rou's feelings for him. How did she fall for him? Don't you know you're making me proud? Yezi was even more surprised and unprepared. She widened her eyes and opened her mouth wide like a little fish spitting bubbles. Puff, 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 puff. After being stunned for a long time, she finally came to her senses. She grabbed Yi Rou's arm and shook it desperately. She said with a bitter face, Sister, I was wrong. I was wrong. I shouldn't have dragged you into this. You're saying this because you're mad at me, aren't you? Yi Rou looked at her calmly and did not answer her question. Sister, are you serious? Yezi stopped acting coquettishly and asked with a serious face. I'm not joking, Yi Rou said. She would never joke about matters of the heart. If she liked someone, she liked him. If she didn't like him, she didn't like him. Why did she have to cover up or deny it? That was not in line with her character. She didn't cover up. She was just not good at expressing it. He is Fang Yan, isn't he? Yi Rou nodded slightly. The man she liked was Fang Yan. Hello, I'm Fang Yan. The word Fang means square and Yan means two fires. My name is good, right? What's your name? He said when they met for the first time. At that time, she was 5 and he was 6. My name is Yi Rou. Yi Rou replied. While speaking, Yi Rou kicked him away because he broke the watermelon seedling she had just planted. The poor seedling was broken into 2 pieces. It looked extremely miserable under the scorching sun. Fang Yan climbed up from the melon field. His head and face were covered with dust. He spat out the sand in his mouth and said angrily, What's your name, Yi Rou? You're not gentle at all. You're little dog Yi, dinosaur Yi, bandit Yi. Before he finished his words, Yi Rou punched him to the ground. How could an upright man talk so much nonsense? At that time, Yi Rou didn't like to talk very much. She thought most of what people said was nonsense. Why did he talk when he knew it was nonsense? It was so strange. He bullied you when you were a child. He called you ugly, The ugliest woman in Swallow Fort. He peeked at you when you were putting on makeup and put a toad in your pocket, Yi Ro said angrily. One by one, he listed all the things that Fang Yen had done to Yi Ro that were too numerous to be recorded in the book. Yi Ro smiled. She remembered all these things. Yi Fengxing, is your sister at home? No. Really? Really? Yi Fengxing said impatiently. How many times have I told you? She went for a walk by Stone River. She went with the ancestor. If the ancestor doesn't come back, she won't come back. That's great. Can I put this toad in her pocket? I don't think that's a good idea. Yi Fengxing, are you betraying us? Look at my face. Look at how she beat me. You can fight back, Yi Fengxing said. If I can fight back, why would I put a toad in her pocket? You keep watch for me. I'll put the toad in her pocket. Didn't you say she hates this kind of thing with thick hair all over its body? It's disgusting to touch. Yi Ruru stood by the window and looked into the room. Fang Yen tiptoed in and opened Yi Ruru's wardrobe. He was dazzled by the dazzling array of women's clothes in the wardrobe. He grabbed a coat and sniffed it. Then he put a toad in the pocket of her sportswear that she often wore. Coo coo coo. The toad made a few noises and jumped out of the pocket. Then, two teenagers, one fat and one thin, hurriedly tried to catch the toad that tried to escape without any spirit of sacrifice. Finally, Toad was caught. Yi Ro walked into the room and beat them up without worry. Sister, Yi Ro was very anxious and said, Look at him. Thick lips, flat nose, one big eye and one small eye. Fang Yen thought about his appearance seriously and said angrily, Hey, little Yi Ro, which eye is big and which is small? They're all the same, okay? Humph. Yi Ro snorted at Fang Yen and continued to criticize Fang Yan's shortcomings. She said, He's not handsome at all. He doesn't have any temperament. He's not tall or burly. Most importantly, his character is terrible. He can't beat you in a fight. Every time you fight, he will lie on the ground and beg for mercy. Once, he said if you let him go, he will recognize you as his master. Why do you like him? Sister, the man you like should have the appearance of Lu Dehua, the temperament of Tony Leung, and the self-restraint of Chen Daoming. He should wear a decent suit and drink red wine or whiskey elegantly. He should have a magnetic voice and a gentle and loving look in his eyes. Look at Fang Yen. What does he have? You're so excellent. What kind of man can't you find? Why do you have to like him? Yes, why do I have to like him? Fang Yen was also very interested in this question. Except that I'm a little more handsome than others, I don't have many advantages. Yi Ro brushed away a lock of hair on her forehead. Her voice was calm, gentle, and firm. But I just like it. Sister, Yi Ro stamped her feet angrily. She knew her sister's character. No one could change her mind once she made up her mind. It was useless to say more. So, she pinched Fang Yan's arm hard, and then turned around and ran to Swallow Dock. You're so annoying. You're so annoying. Yi Ro's angry shout came from afar. Yi Ro ran away shamefully or tactfully. Then, only Fang Yen and Yi Ro were left in the boundless wilderness. Fang Yen looked at Yi Ro and Yi Ro looked back at him at the same time. She didn't hide. She wasn't shy or surprised. If it weren't for the redness at the base of her ears, it was almost impossible to find any emotion on her face. It was even more difficult to understand. She just confessed to a man. But it was as simple and common as drinking a cup of tea and eating an apple. Fang Yen looked at Yi Ro with gentle eyes and said in a magnetic voice, Let's walk around? Okay. Yi Ro nodded. So, Fang Yen took Yi Ro to the rape field further away. He didn't take Yi Ro to the Stone River because it had the best scenery and the most people. When you were in love, you wished there were only you and her in the world. Crack, crack, their shoes stepped in the snow. Because no one had ever been there, they were the first pair of pioneers. Fang Yen didn't say anything. Neither did Yi Ro. The atmosphere was dull, but they were very happy. The joy was like wheat sprouts covered by thin snow. They were not afraid of the cold and the heavy pressure. They tried their best to poke their heads out and see the new and magical world outside. Fang Yen walked a little faster and walked side by side with Yi Ro. He looked straight ahead and whispered, "Can I hold your hand?" Yi Ro didn't respond or object. Fang Yen knew that the girl's no objection was the best response. So, he stretched out his hand to Yi Ro's little hand carefully. He stretched out half of his hand and then retracted it. He reached out again unwillingly and then retracted it again. He tried several times but still couldn't hold Yi Ro's hand. He looked at Yi Ro warily and said, "If I hold your hand, you won't hit me, will you?" Chapter 425. It was not because Fang Yen was paranoid, but because he had suffered a lot from Yi Ro's punches. This woman usually didn't talk much, but she would beat someone up if she didn't agree with him. Although she said she liked him, who knew whether it was a trap or not? In the eyes of Fang Yen, a conspiracy theorist, Yi Ro deliberately said she liked him. When he wanted to hold her hand, she would fly into a rage and take the opportunity to beat him up. At that time, who could he reason with? Even if he went to Mr. Qin to seek justice, it was he who held the girl's hand first, wasn't it? The last time they met was when Qin Etienne came over. The two girls fought openly and secretly, and Yi Ro suffered a little loss in front of Qin Etienne. After Qin Etienne left Swallow Dock, who knew whether she would keep the anger in her heart and find a chance to vent it on him? Women were all vengeful. Yi Ro stopped and looked at Fang Yen, who was standing in front of her with clear eyes. She took the initiative to reach out her hand to Fang Yen, and Fang Yen immediately made a fighting posture. "If you dare to hit me, I will fight back." "What do you want to do?" Fang Yen asked with vigilance. "Put your hand down," Yi Ro said. "You don't want to suddenly throw me away, do you?" Fang Yen still put down his hand, but his body was still a little stiff. Yi Ro took another step forward and took the initiative to put her two small hands in Fang Yen's big hands. Fang Yen exerted a little force and held that soft, warm, and beautiful little hand tightly in his palm. Fang Yen was so moved that he was about to cry. He said with red eyes, "You really didn't hit me. I won't hit you in the future," Yi Ro said seriously. She was really serious when she said this. That was because she also realized that Fang Yen was very afraid of her. He was also very vigilant, as if she could beat him up at any time. Along the way, she reflected on herself and realized that she had indeed gone overboard with many things. For example, you shouldn't send him flying when he steps on his melon seedlings, because he might not be paying attention to his feet. For example, she shouldn't have knocked him to the ground and painted his face with lipstick when he peeked at her makeup, because he might not have done it on purpose. For example, she shouldn't have beaten him so brutally every time they sparred, because this hurt a man's self-esteem. A man's face still had to be protected, especially a man who loved to keep up appearances. "I'm an insecure man." Fang Yen carefully felt the smoothness of Yi Ro's palms. How could the hands of such a violent woman feel so comfortable? Compared to the time when he was humiliated by it, this was simply the difference between heaven and hell. "My family was poor when I was young, and I was always bullied by the children in the village. After that, every time we sparred, I was always the one who lost. This is the first time I've lost, and I only feel indignant. The second time I lost, I still couldn't accept it. After losing 5 or 6 times in a row for 5 or 6 years, I began to despair and felt that I might never be able to defeat you. I began to become sensitive and began to feel inferior in the crowd." Fang Yen held Yi Ro's hand, and the two of them walked on the country road like an ordinary couple. "I was very angry at that time. I was angry at you for being so excellent. Isn't it enough for a girl to be beautiful? Why do you have to be so smart? It's unnecessary for you to be smart. Why do you have such a high talent in martial arts? I felt that God was too kind to you, but it was too unfair to me. If someone told me that you were God's goddaughter, I wouldn't doubt it. Otherwise, why would God give you all the best things in the world? Do you know how much I wanted to defeat you at that time? Once I dreamed that I defeated you, and I actually woke up with a happy smile. When I woke up, I found it was just a dream, and I felt a little depressed. I thought that even if it was a dream, it should be a beautiful dream, so I tried hard to fall asleep and continue the dream, but I lost sleep. Fang Yen was wearing a green robe, while Yi Ro was wearing a white robe. Seen from a distance, the black and the white were a perfect match. At that time, I met another girl. She was very beautiful, she was very gentle, and she was very understanding. When I was sad, she would comfort me. When I was desperate, she would encourage me. When I was injured, she would clean and bandage my wounds. When I scolded you. Speaking of this, Fang Yen hurriedly glanced at Yi Ro and found that she wasn't angry, so he continued, she would also scold you with me, blaming you for beating me like this. Compared with you, I felt that she was an angel sent by God to save me. At that time, I felt that all the suffering I had endured had been rewarded. When I was sad, I would go to her. Sometimes, I pretended to go to her. When I was injured, I would go to her and ask her to bandage my wounds. She would say some bad things about you. I often pretended to be injured to go to her. After a long pause, Fang Yen smiled bitterly and said, I thought she and I were a perfect match. She knew my feelings, and I also knew hers. At last, I tragically found that she already had someone she liked, and I was just an insignificant person. Yi Ro held Fang Yan's hand tightly, expressing her comfort and sympathy for him. I was a failure. I felt that I was a failure of a man. For a long time I was very sad and timid. I was a very fragile man, and I felt that I couldn't bear such emotional pain again. Since then, I have been very careful and prudent about relationships. Fang Yen held Yi Ro's hand tightly and said in a low voice, What you said just now is true? You didn't lie to me, did you? I didn't. Yi Ro also held Fang Yan's hand tightly, looked into his eyes seriously, and said, I didn't lie to you. If I lied to you, how could I get angry when I saw you with her? If I lied to you, how could I beat you more angrily every time you went to her to bandage your wounds? Of course, Yi Ro would not tell Fang Yen this secret. Looking at Yi Ro, Fang Yen tried to calm down his heartbeat and said, Later, I found that you have always been by my side. Some people say that a woman is made of a man's rib. So, you must believe that there must be a woman in the vast sea of people who will love you as much as she loves her own body. Because you are her body and she is your limb. You must have a close relationship like implanted flesh and blood. In your life, there must be such a person. She will always be by your side, through thick and thin, and never leave you. For eyes met, and there were bright sparks in their eyes. Fang Yen licked his lips and said, I have one more question. Can I kiss you? Yi Ro's pretty face was smeared with a layer of peach blossom red, and she lowered her head in silence. Fang Yen held her pretty face, closed his eyes, and kissed her gently. It was soft, sweet, fragrant, and dazzling. It was a wonderful feeling. It was like a long and wonderful dream, which you indulged in and never wanted to wake up. Fang Yan's lips lingered on Yi Ro's for a while, and then he reluctantly broke away and said with a happy face, This is my first kiss. What about you? Bang! Yi Ro punched Fang Yan's eye. Caught off guard, Fang Yen fell to the ground with a miserable howl. Fang Yen climbed up from the snow, covered his golden eyes, and shouted angrily at Yi Ro, Liar, all women in the world are liars. I'd rather believe in ghosts than believe in a woman's stupid mouth. You promised me that you wouldn't hit me again. What are you doing now? You're such a liar. Yi Ro stood still and looked at Fang Yen with a sneer and said, It's your fault for saying something wrong. What did I say wrong? Which sentence? Fang Yen was like an engine that had been shut off. He suddenly became silent. He said it was his first kiss, and then he asked Yi Ro if it was. Didn't this mean that there was a second possibility? Does Yi Ruru kiss any other man besides me? It seemed that he had indeed said something very stupid. How do you scold me when you're with her? Yi Ro looked down at Fang Yen, who was lying in the ditch, and suddenly asked aloud. Fang Yan's eyes lit up. Fang Yan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Didn't she change the topic too fast? How did she scold me? Actually, it's not really a scolding. She just said that your kung fu was too good, and you were too proud, so you bullied me. Fang Yen smiled awkwardly. Now that I think about it, maybe I was jealous of you. Think about it, a man like me was always bullied by a girl. Who could accept such a thing? What did you use to bribe Yezi? Yi Ro continued to ask. What bribe? Fang Yen asked with a confused face. How could I bribe Yezi? Yezi is your sister and your loyal confidant. What can I use to bribe her? If you didn't bribe her, would she drag me here for a walk? Would she take the initiative to greet you? Would she force me to ask if I liked you? Would she cooperate with you to put on this show? Yi Ro raised her doubts one after another. Coincidence. Fang Yen smiled and said, It's a complete coincidence. Don't misunderstand. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll lie to you too. Yi Ro threatened. Fang Yen thought for a moment. If Yi Ro told him that she was lying when she said she liked him, wouldn't he suffer a great loss? So, Fang Yen decided to be honest and said, I promise to give her a box of black tortoise ointment. But Yi Ro stepped on him again. Chapter 426. Yi Ro had planted two moles, Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan, on his side, or they might have taken the initiative to surrender, which made Fang Yen feel that he had suffered a great loss. He had also tried his best to persuade Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan to be his double spies, which meant that they seemed to be helping Yi Ro, but in fact they were helping him. They nodded without blinking an eye. Fang Yen had completely given up on these two guys who betrayed him. Originally, Fang Yen couldn't bribe Yezi. Yezi was Yi Ro's hardcore fan, so it was impossible for her to betray Yi Ro and sell any information about her. Moreover, she and Fang Yen had always disliked each other. She thought Fang Yen had no backbone and integrity, while Fang Yen thought she talked too much nonsense by acting coquettishly and cute. They often quarreled when they met, and even recently, they often made sarcastic and vicious attacks on each other. However, the arrival of Qin Etienne solved this problem for Fang Yen. When Qin Etienne came to Swallow Dock to pay a New Year's visit, he brought a lot of valuable and rare gifts. One of them was Xiangui ointment, which was hard to find in the human world. The so-called Xiangui was also called the fire turtle. Its whole body was red, and it was mostly born in the sea or valley of volcanic eruptions. It was said that this kind of turtle was very spiritual. It could predict the volcanic eruption months in advance and then migrate in group. It lived in volcanic rocks for a long time, and volcanic rocks had excellent skin care and beauty effects. Therefore, the turtle's shell on its body was a pure natural beauty product. When Fang Yen chatted with Yi Fengxing, he deliberately explained the effects of Xiangui ointment in detail, and Yi Fengxing naturally conveyed this to Yezi. Yezi's mother's birthday was coming, and as a daughter, she was worried about what special gift to give her mother. How could she remain rational when she heard that there was such a thing? She begged Yi Fengxing to ask Fang Yen for Xiangui ointment, even if it was something in exchange. Yi Fengxing brought her to Fang Yen and asked her to personally discuss the deal with Fang Yen. After some intense and friendly communication, Yezi agreed to Fang Yan's small condition. Of course, Fang Yen also promised to give Yezi a black turtle ointment as a thank you gift. But he didn't expect that Yi Ro would still see through his covert cooperation. Fang Yen had some confidence in his acting skills. Yi Ro's eyes widened and her mouth opened wide like a little goldfish spitting bubbles. Her incredulous expression was at the level of a movie queen. How did Yi Ro find out? Yi Ro violently beat up Fang Yen. She stepped on Fang Yen's chest and shouted, "Tell me, do you like me?" "I like it," Fang Yen replied embarrassedly. He felt that he must have blushed because he was too embarrassed to look into Yi Ro's eyes. However, he also wanted to look into Yi Ro's eyes. He wanted to see the look on her face when she heard the answer, to see her cute expression when she was shy. How could he like Yi Ro? How could he not like Yi Ro? When you understand the truth of the matter, when you know more about this woman, when you knew that she disobeyed the arrangements of her family and accepted the dual request from the Fang family year after year, when you were in danger, she was the first to rush to the city thousands of miles away to rescue you, when you were in danger, when you saw her face filled with sorrow as she watched the tragic scene when she broke free from the net, and when those birds flew away, her expression of joy and relief, the conflicts when you were young became beautiful marks in your memory. The fights and quarrels and being beaten became the flowers blooming on both sides of your life. Every interaction was lovely, and every contact was worth remembering. When you realize that even being bullied by her became a kind of sweetness, is this the legendary arrival of love? Yi Ro blushed slightly. Then she withdrew her foot with satisfaction and said, "I also want a black turtle ointment." Then, she turned around and walked towards the village. She walked gracefully and briskly. Fang Yen was lying in the rape field with a happy and sweet smile on his face. All of a sudden, he felt that he had become a Superman and that he had the whole world. "Yi Ro," Fang Yen shouted at Yi Ro's back. Yi Ro's body slightly paused, but she didn't look back. "Yi Ro," Fang Yen shouted at the vast sky. The clouds in the sky dispersed, and no clouds stopped for him. When you like someone, you want to let the whole world know. Yi looked at Fang Yen strangely and said, "Why does my sister like you?" Fang Yen smiled with his eyes narrowed into slits and said, "Why can't she like me? She and I are childhood sweethearts. We are the two most outstanding young men in Swallow Fort, the first and second in Jianghu." Yi sneered and interrupted Fang Yan's self-praise. She said disdainfully, "What kind of childhood sweethearts are you? When did you pick green plums with my sister? When did you ever ride a childhood horse with my sister? Except that you were beaten black and blue by her, what else do you have to show off?" Fang Yen was so angry that he retorted, "Did your math teacher teach you Chinese? I was just making an analogy. Childhood sweethearts don't necessarily have to pick green plums and ride with each other. It can also mean that we grew up together. Your sister has seen me in open crotch pants. Have you seen it? Hooligan." Yi kicked him. Fang Yen dodged lightly and said, "If you call me a rogue again, there will be no more black tortoise ointment." "You dare to lie to me?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" Fang Yen sneered. "Anyway, I don't need you. You are a despicable man who breaks his promise. It's not good for your sister to know that you scold your brother-in-law like this. You are not my brother-in-law. My eldest uncle won't agree, my second uncle won't agree, my father won't agree, and my grandfathers won't agree. No one in the Yi family will agree." Fang Yen thought about it seriously and felt that Ye's words were very reasonable. He was speechless. So he looked at Yi with a kind face and said, "Sister Yi, why don't you talk to your father and let him stand on my side?" It was better to rope in as many people as possible. There was strength in numbers. If the Yi family held an internal vote for this matter, Ye's vote was also very important. Yi raised her head and glanced at Fang Yen, saying, "Why?" Fang Yen quickly took out a delicate steel box from his arms and said, "This is for you." Yi took the black tortoise ointment and said, "This is for me." Fang Yen handed over another one and said, "This is for you too." Yi blinked her eyes and looked at Fang Yen, saying, "Are you trying to bribe me?" "Yes." "Deal." Yi nodded happily. "Then can I take this box too?" "Yes." Fang Yen nodded affirmatively. Yi held the two boxes of black tortoise ointment and skipped back. Fang Yen took out his mobile phone and sent a message to Yi Ro, Honey, Yi brought the black tortoise ointment back for you. Then, Fang Yen put his mobile phone in his pocket and went back to sleep adorably. Time was like the cell phone data, used up quickly. On the 8th day of the Spring Festival, his aunt's family decided to return to Mingzhu. His uncle, Zhou Fan, would start work on the 9th, and Zhou Numerology would go back to school early on the 10th. On this trip to Swallow Dock, they had experienced far too many things, and the feelings of this family were truly too great. They had experienced life and death after being poisoned, and they had experienced the life and death of the Sword God's family. They had experienced the tragedy of almost being ruined, and they had also experienced the beauty of family reunion. They had seen the mysterious Yi family and the powerful Qin family. They also knew the connections behind Fang Yan's little nephew and the influence he could bring. The previous disdain had turned into respect, and the previous neglect had turned into respect. Fang Yijing hugged Fang Yan and said softly, "Fang Yan, our Fang family has placed all our hopes on you. You have to work hard. Don't let Grandpa down and don't let your parents down. Auntie will always support you." "Auntie, don't worry," Fang Yan said with a smile. "The Fang family will definitely rise again. Yes, work is more important, and you have to hurry up with finding a girlfriend." Fang Yijing said, "If you can't find a suitable one in Huaqing, go to Mingzhu and find Auntie. I'll bring a group of girls for you to choose from. If you like any girl, Auntie can help you get her." Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, "Auntie, I'm looking for a girlfriend. Why do you make it sound like I'm picking girls in a nightclub? You have to go with the flow when it comes to relationship. Besides, do you think I'm someone who can't find a girlfriend?" Fang Yijing patted Fang Yan and said, "Don't be arrogant." Zhou Fan came over and shook hands with Fang Yan and said in a deep voice, "Thank you." Fang Yan laughed and said, "Auntie, we're all family." "Yes, we're all family." Zhou Fan nodded and said, "If you have time, go to Mingzhu and see your auntie. She's always talking about you." "I'll go." Fang Yan nodded. Zhou Mingli didn't like Fang Yan, but he didn't dare to offend Fang Yan. Under the pressure of his parents' eyes, he braced himself and walked over to greet Fang Yan and said, "Cousin, we're going back." Fang Yan patted Zhou Mingli's shoulder and said, "Young man, you're quite spirited. Come back next summer vacation, I'll show you what it's like to split bricks in the air." Zhou Mingli was so scared that his face turned pale and he kept stepping back. Fang Yingying pushed Fang Huwei out. The old man sat in a wheelchair, watching his daughter and son-in-law walk out of the courtyard with big and small bags in their hands. His smile was lonely and sad. Add a few more clothes, eat a few more mouthfuls of food, go out without mother's millet porridge, look at your face, touch your hand, then put blessings into your son's pocket. Now, it's time to leave home, only then can I understand the worry of a mother who travels 1,000 miles. Chapter 427. On the 6th day of the new year, the core members of Swallow Fort's Handsome Men team gathered together again. They hunted 2 rabbits and a few pheasants in the back of the mountain. Zhu Ziden was lucky enough to catch a vegetable snake, and brought a few kilograms of dried mushrooms and vegetables from home to stew them in a big pot. A modified version of the dragon and phoenix fight was made. The broth in the pot was bubbling, and the fragrance made everyone swallow their saliva. Swallow Fort didn't have to worry about food and water, and they were fed well during the new year. But for some reason, no matter how good the food at home was, it couldn't compare to a big pot outside. Home flowers didn't have the fragrance of wild flowers, and fat meat couldn't compare to wild vegetable soup. Ruan Qian stood by the stove, adding oil and salt, stirring the pot from time to time with a large wooden spoon to prevent the meat from getting wet. Li Xiaotian, Zhu Ziden, and Chen Yanqing and Wang Kaixian, who had just returned home for the new year, were lying on the hay bed drinking wine, occasionally looking into the distance. "What's going on with Fang Yan and Yi Fengxing? Why aren't they here yet?" Zhu Ziden drank a mouthful of wine and asked in confusion. If they don't come, then they won't come. We'll finish the meat and drink the wine. If we're late, they'll have to wash the bowls. Ruan Qian smiled. Ruan Qian's words make sense. Come, brothers, let's eat, let's finish the soup. Chen Yanqing jumped up from the ground, grabbed a bowl, and was about to grab a spoon to eat the meat. Ruan Qian grabbed the spoon and didn't let go, saying, Wait, wait, the meat is still raw. Yi Fengxing is here, Zhu Ziden shouted. The chubby Yi Fengxing ran over, panting. He bowed repeatedly and apologized, saying, Brothers, I'm late. I accept my punishment. I'll drink 2 more bowls later. Zhu Ziden laughed and scolded. Brothers, did you hear that? Yi Fengxing is late, and he wants to drink more? Do you agree? Disagree. Everyone shouted in unison. Wang Kaixian threw the wine to Yi Fengxing and asked, Where's Fang Yan? Didn't you two come together? Yi Fengxing gulped down a mouthful of liquor and panted heavily. He didn't come with me. When I went to his house to look for him, his mother said that he went out early in the morning. You went out early in the morning? Where did he go? Everyone looked at each other. No one knew where Fang Yan was. All right, you don't have to worry about him. Yi Fengxing waved his hand and said, That kid is as sly as a fox. Even if we all die, he will still be alive and kicking, happily hugging a beauty and drinking wine. You're the one who hung up. How can you say such inauspicious things during the new year? That's right, no ivory comes out of a dog's mouth. Yi Fengxing's words caused everyone to explode, and Zhu Ziden even kicked his butt. If you took the initiative to get hit and scolded by others, then you are a brother. Those who took the initiative to beat and scold you were your enemies. He's coming, he's coming. Wang Kaixian pointed in the direction of Shihizi and shouted. Everyone looked over, and then everyone's expression became sluggish. It was as if they had seen a white rabbit and a big bad wolf holding hands. It was a funny and strange scene. This can't be real, right? Zhu Ziden asked with her mouth wide open. Our eyes must be playing tricks on us, Ruan Qian said. The fat on Yi Fengxing's face trembled, and he cursed fiercely. This bastard. Fang Yan walked over holding Yi Ro's hand and said with a smile, Sorry, we're late. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Fang Yan and Yi Ro's tightly held hands. Zhu Ziden gritted her teeth and looked at Fang Yan, saying, You're not going to tell us that this is real, are you? Oh, I forgot to introduce, Fang Yan said with a smile, She's Yi Ro. Everyone's gaze toward Fang Yan became murderous. Who didn't know that she was Yi Ro? What shocked everyone was why Yi Ro appeared in front of them hand in hand. Didn't she always hit you? Didn't you hate her the most? Why did you manage to win the hearts of all the lovers of Swallow Dock? Yi Ro was a special existence in Swallow Dock. Almost all the boys of her age thought she was excellent, beautiful, and a goddess. However, no one would have the courage to strike up a conversation with her to please her. She was a goddess worshipped by everyone. The goddess should sit high up on the altar and accept the worship of the people. She walked down the altar on her own initiative and walked hand in hand with the man who was considered the least successful in their circle. Such a scene was too visually shocking. This was also the reason why everyone was so surprised but couldn't ask because of Yi Ro's presence. She's my girlfriend, Fang Yan said embarrassedly. You should call her sister-in-law. Zhu Ziden was extremely angry and said, I'm older than you. How can you call her sister-in-law? Fang Yan looked at Yi Ro with a smile and said, They all thought you were barbaric and violent before, so they don't respect you much now. Don't be angry with them. So, Zhu Ziden hurriedly greeted Yi Ro respectfully and bowed. Hello, sister-in-law. Hello, sister-in-law. Wang Kaixian and Chen Yanqing also hurriedly came to greet Yi Ro. This officially confirmed the relationship between Fang Yan and Yi Ro. Yi Fengxing grabbed Fang Yan and shouted angrily, I went to your house to find you, but you went to my house? Yes. I chatted with the ancestor for a while and drank a cup of Mao Jian tea. When Ro finished practicing, we came over together, Fang Yen said with a smile. You're not late, right? You and my sister are really together? Exactly what you think, Fang Yen said with a smile. Don't you think we're a good match? A good match. Yi Fengxing glanced at Yi Ro and didn't dare to continue. He was also quite afraid of his sister, even though Yi Ro had never hit or scolded him. Ruan Qian was smarter. He found a big bowl and scooped a big bowl of meat soup for Yi Ro. He smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, it's time to eat." "Thank you." Yi Ro blushed and took the bowl of meat soup. Fang Yen took the initiative to get a bowl of meat soup and sat cross-legged on a pile of licorice with a few friends. He said, "The date of departure has been decided?" "I'm leaving tomorrow," Zhu Ziden said. "To the North Sea. These years, my cultivation has been obstructed. I've been eating and waiting for death every day. This kind of life is really boring." "I should have left long ago," Fang Yen nodded and said, "This swallow dock is good, but it's too comfortable. A peaceful mind is suitable for cultivation, but a murderous mind is suitable for improving martial skills. The border is a good place. Kill a few more brats who invade our territory, and maybe you'll break through again. I'm not in a hurry, but my family has already arranged for me to go to Flower City in a while. My brother is developing in the north, so I'll go to the south." Li Xiaotian said with a smile, "At that time, Fang Yen will have to take care of me." "Don't worry." Fang Yen nodded and said, "I'll introduce a few friends to you when I go to Flower City." Ruan Qian glanced at Yi Ro and said, "Uncle Donghai is going down to train after the new year. I'll be third uncle's secretary." Lin Donghai had worked by Yi Daoling's side for many years, and now he was going to work in Jingjin City. He could be considered a daughter-in-law of many years becoming a mother-in-law. With Lin Donghai being sent down, Yi Daoling lacked a usable person. This time, he didn't choose from the Yi family's direct descendants or collateral descendants. Instead, he chose the smart and careful Ruan Qian. This also showed the Yi family's attitude. Swallow Dock was everyone's Swallow Dock. The Yi family was willing to lead everyone to a brighter and better future. Through the last incident, the Yi family was finally willing to stand up and be the leader of Swallow Dock. Everyone praised Ruan Qian, telling him to perform well and strive to become a capable person like Uncle Donghai in the future. Ruan Qian smiled shyly and said, "The person third uncle values the most is Fang Yen. If Fang Yen is willing, then I won't have a chance." "You can't say that." Fang Yen encouraged Ruan Qian. "Last time, I talked with third uncle. He has a very clear understanding of your abilities. He chose you as his secretary after careful consideration. Otherwise, why didn't he use Yi Fengxing? Why didn't he use Zhu Ziden or Li Xiaotian?" "I will work hard," Ruan Qian said with a firm gaze. Chen Yanqing was going to take a temporary position in a city or county after the new year to prepare for future promotions. Wang Kaixian was going to study at a military academy. In the future, he was going to walk the military path like his father. Other than Yi Fengxing, the youths of Swallow Dock were about to go their separate ways. Yi Fengxing was in a very bad mood. He raised the bottle of liquor in his hand and proudly declared, "Each of you have your own path, each of you have your own place to go. I will stay at Swallow's Dock to help watch over the house. I wish you all a bright future and a bright future." Fang Yen glanced at Yi Fengxing and sighed softly. "We'll go to Yanjing again in a couple of days and have a good talk with third uncle. You have to go out for a walk. If you really can't, you can come with me to Huaqing. With everyone together, you won't have to worry about not having a bowl of rice to eat." "That's right. Why don't you come with me to the North Sea?" Zhu Ziden said. "Let's go to the military academy." Wang Kaixian grinned. "I was just worried that I would be bored inside alone." Yiwen glanced at Yi Fengxing and said, "Do whatever you want. Ask for whatever you want. No one can help you. The only person who can help you is yourself." If you don't even have the courage to go out, how can you climb to the peak of martial arts? Yi Fengxing was stunned for a long time. Then, he happily jumped up from the ground and ran towards the village. His running posture was very strange. He looked like a big black bear running left and right. Everyone laughed for a while, feeling happy for him from the bottom of their hearts. Fang Yen raised the wine bottle in his hand and said, "A good man's ambition is to travel far and wide. Going home is to find the best girl. This separation is for the sake of a better reunion in the future. Everyone, I wish the Prince Charming team of Swallow Dock a bright future and success." Clang! Everyone's wine bottles clashed together. The melancholy of parting turned into bowls of burning knife after knife. Chapter 428. A few days after the New Year, the snow on the road had mostly melted. However, an even bigger snowstorm had covered the road, covering the wheat sprouts and leaves that had just emerged from the snow. The elders of Swallow Dock shouted that the snow was a sign of a bountiful year, and that there would definitely be a good harvest this year. No matter what status they had in the outside world, they were simple and pure farmers in Swallow Dock. Kacha kacha, the car rolled over the hard, frozen ground. Every time the tires rolled, the sound of ice and snow being crushed could be heard. These beautiful spirits were both tenacious and fragile. Fang Yixing was driving very slowly. The black Buick sedan was like a giant tortoise slowly climbing on the surface of the snow. Fang Yixing had been very busy these past few days. His art exhibition was going to be held at the glittering Jewel Hall. After Fang Yixing had given up on martial arts, he had focused all his attention on writing poetry and painting. As a result, he had always been ridiculed by the people of Swallow Dock. After so many years of hard work, he had finally achieved something in this area. It was indeed something to be happy about. If I can't become a brilliant martial artist, then I'll become a brilliant painter. Fang Yixing had a kind smile on his face. That way, I won't be embarrassed by that kid, right? You don't know, but when our old man talks about that kid, he's so excited that he can't help but sing. It's us brothers who have disappointed Master too much. That's why he has placed more of his hopes on Fang Yen. When the art exhibition is held, I'll invite sister-in-law and Fang Yen over to take a look. Wang Dong said with a smile. They'll definitely be proud of you when they see your work. Wang Dong was Fang Hui's disciple, and also Fang Yixing's junior brother. Later, because he cultivated too hard, his qi was torn apart, causing his internal energy to leak out. Fortunately, he was discovered in time by Mo Qingdi, who used the great art dispersal technique to disperse the violent energy in his body through his acupuncture points and countless hairs. This saved his life. However, from then on, Wang Dong was cut off from the path of martial arts, and could no longer gather internal energy. If he used too much energy, his whole body would ache. Wang Dong remained in the Fang family and became a member of the Fang family. He helped the Fang family manage some of the family's businesses. Following the paralysis of elder Fang Hui and the sudden death of Mo Qingdi, the Fang family's business plummeted. Their market share was almost swallowed up by others. Since Wang Dong didn't have a place to use his skills in Beijing, he could only work as an assistant to Fang Yixing's art exhibition. When Fang Yixing was rushing between Swallow Dock and Swallow Jing City, Wang Dong acted as his temporary driver. Yes, we have to bring them to have a look, Fang Yixing said with a smile, but there was a desolate look on his face. If we don't give that fellow a good shock, I'm afraid we won't be able to control him. I heard that he's dating a child from the Yi clan. Isn't he afraid that the Yi clan will break his legs? Let the children handle their own matters. Wang Dong consoled him. If this matter really succeeds, then it'll be a match made in heaven for our Swallow Dock. In the past, I felt that Fang Yen and Miss Yi looked like a couple. The Yi family's attitude was important, but it wasn't the most important. The key is still Miss Ye's choice. Yes, I'm very satisfied with the Yi clan's daughter's appearance and character. It's just that she's too unsociable, and her martial arts are a bit too high. I'm afraid that Fang Yen will be bullied. Fang Yixing thought of his son's miserable state every time he sparred with Yi Ro. He couldn't help but worry about his son's future marriage. If he married a girl like Yi Ro, wouldn't he get beaten up every 3 days and beaten up every 5 days? When it came to marrying a wife, it was naturally better to have a virtuous and loyal wife. Wang Dong laughed heartily. Senior, there's no use worrying about this. Miss Yi is proud and arrogant. There are quite a few youngsters in Swallow Jing who like her. However, Fang Yen was able to succeed. Naturally, he has his outstanding points. Moreover, who knows if this is someone's private affair, and Fang Yen enjoys it. Fang Yixing was a bit angry. He thought to himself, could it be that my son was born to be so cheap that he likes to be beaten? But the car window was hit by a huge object, causing a muffled sound. Bang! Wang Dong slammed on the brakes. The heavy car skidded a few times on the layer of ice and snow before coming to a stop. Wang Dong didn't immediately open the car door to check. Instead, he sat in the driver's seat and looked around vigilantly. The red and white object had already slid to the ground. A shocking brownish-red bloodstain had fallen onto the car window. From the color of the bloodstain, it could be seen that the object had already been dead for a long time. What was it? Fang Yixing asked. I don't know. Wang Dong said. I'll go down and take a look. No need. Let's go. Fang Yixing said with a serious expression. There might be trouble. Wang Dong didn't say anything else. He prepared to start the car and leave this dangerous place. He had practiced martial arts for many years. Even though he had lost all of his qi, his intuition towards danger was still quite sharp. It's too late, Fang Yixing said. It was indeed too late. In front of the car stood a mysterious person completely shrouded in a black robe. He appeared like a ghost, like a wandering ghost in the wilderness. Trying to be mysterious, Wang Dong clenched his teeth and started the car. He slammed on the accelerator and charged towards the black-robed person. Boom! The car ran over the black-robed person's position, but the black-robed person had already disappeared. Wang Dong didn't dare to slow down. The car maintained its high speed as it sped towards Swallow Dock. As long as they returned to Swallow Dock, or rather, as long as they got close to it, they would be truly safe. He believed that no one would dare to behave atrociously in Swallow Dock. Because the ground was too slippery and the car was moving too quickly, the car's tires skidded left and right. From time to time, it would jump into a nearby ditch. Wang Dong gripped the steering wheel tightly and tried his best to control the direction of the car so that it wouldn't jump into a ditch or flip over. Wang Dong's forehead was covered in sweat and the hair on his body stood on end. His palms were also drenched in sweat as he continuously adjusted the steering wheel. They'd already sped for quite a distance, but Wang Dong was still very clear that they hadn't escaped from danger. That feeling of fear was like a shadow following the body. It was as if the mysterious black-robed person was standing behind you and looking at you with a sneer. Fang Yixing's expression was as gloomy as the color of the sky. He scanned his surroundings for the black-robed person's whereabouts. It was impossible for the black-robed person to be a specter. He also didn't believe that there were any specters in this world. There was a notorious assassin organization in the Arab world that was named after specters. However, Fang Yixing knew that the black-robed person they'd seen was definitely not a member of that assassin organization. He'd already appeared once on New Year's Eve. At that time, he'd wanted to borrow Zhou Fan's hands to take the lives of the entire Fang family. Now, he'd appeared once again. This time, he only wanted to take his life? Fang Yixing's nerves were extremely taut. He was extremely clear that the danger hadn't truly been resolved. He'd seen a lot of things in Swallow Dock, so he didn't think that he'd be able to leave the black-robed person behind just by sitting in the car. This was because there were many people in Swallow Dock who could truly start their cars faster than a car. The fact that they'd suddenly appeared and then suddenly disappeared proved that the black-robed person's speed had already reached the limit. Furthermore, Fang Yan had said that the black-robed person had escaped in order to save Zhou Fan when they'd fought. Not everyone could escape from Fang Yan's hands. Especially escaping from Fang Yan's hands. Crack! A crisp sound rang out from above their heads. The hard metal roof of the car was sliced open by a sharp blade, which pierced towards Wang Dong's head. Wang Dong's body leaned forward, avoiding the most dangerous position, which was his head. "Jump out of the car!" Wang Dong shouted loudly. The black-robed person was on the roof of the car, above their heads. As long as he wanted to, he could stab them 180 times at any time. With such a small space to move around and dodge, every stab could cause them fatal damage. He shouted loudly for Fang Yixing to jump out of the car first. After Fang Yixing jumped out of the car, he'd drive the black-robed person towards the deep ditch on the side of the road. Perhaps that way, he'd be able to buy his senior brother a minute to escape. Even 30 seconds was fine. Bang! Fang Yixing didn't hesitate. He pushed open the car door and jumped out. His body rolled on the snowy ground, then he crawled up and threw himself in the direction of the car. He didn't run away. He wouldn't abandon his brother and escape by himself. Moreover, he was extremely clear that even if he wanted to escape, his chances of success were extremely low. If he stood together with his brother and gathered all of his weak strength together, then perhaps he'd be able to struggle for a chance at survival. When Wang Dong heard the sound of a car door opening behind him, he forcefully turned the steering wheel and drove the black-robed person towards the deep ditch on the side of the road. "Don't you like to hitch a ride?" He wanted to bring the black-robed person into the ditch. Crack! Another blade pierced through the roof of the car. This time, it was still aimed at the top of Wang Dong's head. Wang Dong's body leaned towards the back seat, but because he was too slow, the blade sliced off the tip of his nose. Fresh blood violently gushed out, quickly dyeing his mouth and clothes red. His mouth was filled with large mouthfuls of blood. Even if he coughed, he'd spit out blood. He firmly stepped on the accelerator. Even if he died, he'd drag the black-robed person down. Crack! Another blade pierced through. This time, the blade was both fast and ruthless. It directly pierced through the top of Wang Dong's head. Wang Dong opened his eyes wide with unwillingness. His hands powerlessly fell to the ground. The forcefully twisted steering wheel quickly returned to its original position, emitting a whining sound. At this moment, the car leapt into the air and fell towards the deep ditch on the side of the road. Finally, he'd bought his senior brother a minute of time. Even if it was only 30 seconds, he was willing to trade his life for it. Chapter 429. The people of Swallow Dock believed that a teacher for a day was a father for life. Since Wang Dong was Fang Hui's disciple, Fang Hui was his father. Wang Dong and Fang Yixing weren't just fellow apprentices, they were blood brothers. It wasn't about whose life was more precious, nor was it about who was more qualified to live. Wang Dong had his own family, wife, and child. In the eyes of his wife and child, his life was even more precious than Fang Yixing's. His life was more important than anything else. Wang Dong was willing to fight for a minute or even 30 seconds for his senior brother. He valued friendship over life and death. This was Wang Dong's way of repaying his debt of gratitude. It was rough and deep. The black Buick flew through the air for a short period of time. Because there was a knife stuck in its head, and the handle of the knife was still clamped onto the metal roof of the car, Wang Dong's body wasn't thrown into the air. Clang! Both the man and the car fell into a deep ditch. The ditch was deep and narrow, making it hard for the car to get out of it. The black-robed man tapped the roof of the car with his toes, and his body jumped high into the air. His black robe fluttered in the wind, making him look like a flying bat. He really did look like a black animal, and his ability to stay in the air was astonishing. The black robe flew through the air for a long distance before gently landing on the ground. The mud didn't splash, the snow didn't rise, and the snow didn't leave a trace. Fang Yixing jumped very quickly, but he still couldn't catch up to the speed of the tragedy. When he jumped into the ditch, he pulled out the knife from the roof of the car and dragged Wang Dong's body out. Wang Dong's head and body were already dyed red by his own blood. His eyes were wide open, and blood flowed into his eye sockets. The whites of his eyes had also turned blood red. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. Wang Dong. Fang Yixing hugged Wang Dong tightly, helping him warm up his body that was gradually turning cold. When a person died, the heat would dissipate. Fang Yixing didn't grieve for too long, because he had more important things to do. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped Wang Dong's eyes, wiping the blood from his eyes. However, there was a large hole in his head, and it was still bleeding non-stop. Just as he wiped it clean, the blood gushed in again, dyeing his eyes red. Therefore, Fang Yixing could only force him to close his eyes. He took off his woolen coat and covered Wang Dong's head, face, and body. Afterwards, he picked up the blade that the black-robed man had used to cut open Wang Dong's skull. He tore off the tie around his neck and tied it around Wang Dong's arm. In the end, he tied his necktie into a dead knot, and the knife became one with his body. Fang Yixing stood up and stood in front of the black-robed man again. The black-robed man raised his head. The eyes covered by the black hat were as cold and vicious as those of a wild beast. He looked at Fang Yixing and said, "The people of Swallow Dock, are they not afraid of death?" "I'm afraid of death," Fang Yixing said. "It's good to be alive. No one wants to die." "Why isn't he afraid?" The black-robed man pointed at Wang Dong, who was lying on the ground. "He's called Wang Dong. He was originally a beggar. When his hands and feet were about to be broken and he became a cripple, my father rescued him from the hands of the underground beggar clan. From then on, he became a member of the Fang family. His life was given to him by my father, and his dignity was also given to him by my father. We gave him life, so he used his own method to return a life to the Fang family. We gave him dignity to live, so he chose to die with dignity." Fang Yixing looked at Wang Dong and said softly, "He's a hero." After he died, his corpse was buried in the Fang family's ancestral cave, and his spirit tablet was enshrined in the Fang family's ancestral shrine. As long as the Fang family continues to plant terminated meridians, his incense will never be extinguished. He was explaining to the black-robed man, but it was more like he was giving Wang Dong a guarantee. A hero cherished a hero. In order to save him, Wang Dong gave up his life, so he wasn't stingy in giving him the most important thing that Wang Dong cared about the most. The black-robed man muttered to himself for a long time, then said in a hoarse voice, "The dignity of living, the freedom of life, the ancestral cave, and the ancestral shrine, it's truly enviable. I don't have any of these things. A lonely ghost like me will be thrown into the wilderness or a mass grave after I die. My corpse will be torn apart and eaten by vultures or wild dogs. There's no ancestral cave to bury me in, but there's still incense to burn. No wonder he was willing to die to save you." After pausing for a moment, the black-robed man asked again, "Then, what about Zhou Fan?" "He's a greedy, cowardly, selfish, and cold-hearted person. The reason why I chose him was because I originally thought that he was the same type of person as me." "Why did he also choose that method? He'd rather sacrifice himself than poison the soup? And why was he willing to die for you?" A proud and gentle smile appeared on Fang Yixing's face as he said in a loud voice, "Do you know what home is?" "Home?" The black-robed man thought about it seriously. He really didn't know what home was. What exactly was home? Was it a house that could shelter you from the wind and rain? Was it a pile of luxurious high-class furniture? Or was it to provide you with different women every day? Home is a family. Only when there are people can there be a home. When you get home from work, your wife will have already prepared dinner and boiled chicken soup. When you go out for business, your son will call you over and over again, asking why your father isn't back yet. The two of you will sit at the same table and eat. You will scold your son for his naughty behavior, and you will teach your daughter to study hard. Even when other children's parents come looking for you, as a father, you will stand up and apologize to them or argue with them. Fang Yixing's smile was very gentle, but his eyes began to tear up. The wife he mentioned was his wife, and the son he mentioned was his son. The family he mentioned was his family. He probably wouldn't have the chance to enjoy this kind of happiness ever again, right? You're right, Zhou Fan is indeed the type of person you described. In terms of personality, he is the same type of person as you, but he can't betray his wife and child, and he can't abandon his family and happiness. He has experienced it and he has enjoyed it. Those who have experienced it and enjoyed it will never be like you, like an animal's way of thinking and acting. He fearlessly told the truth and saved the Fang family. The Fang family also gave him tolerance and understanding, and gave him a complete family. The black-cloaked man nodded and said, "You have taught me a lesson. What you said is something I have never experienced or enjoyed, but it is very comfortable to listen to. I don't want to give up my life, I want to try my best to live. That's why I live my life for others, to kill people." The black-cloaked man looked at Fang Yixing and said, "I respect you, I gave you a chance. Unfortunately, until now, no one has come to save you, then I'm sorry." "No need to apologize," Fang Yixing shook his head. "I don't accept your apology. You don't need to give me a chance, I don't need any chance from you. I know you came for my son, but this is even more worrying than coming for me. As a father, I don't have much ability, and when my son is in danger, I can't do much. But I have learned some martial arts before. I can't help him much, but I'll help him exhaust some of your strength." The hatred in the black-cloaked man's eyes disappeared, but his voice was still hoarse and unpleasant to hear, but he said with an extremely serious tone, "I like to torture people, but I won't torture you. You will die a quick death." Fang Yixing didn't say thank you. He wouldn't say thank you to such a person. He tightened his grip on the long saber, lowered his body, and took the initiative to charge at the black-cloaked man. Crack, crack, crack. The leather shoes on his feet stepped on the hard layer of snow, causing the accumulated snow to make crunching noises. He rushed in front of the black-cloaked man, and then slashed at his head. Mountain-splitting saber. This was the simplest and most vicious move among saber technique. It was the saber technique of the Zhao family of Swallow Dock. After that incident, he had tried countless times, and this was only one of his countless failures. The Fang family was good at Tai Chi, and the Tai family of Tai Chi had an extremely high status in the Jianghu. But Tai Chi needed strength. Tai Chi without the support of strength was just fancy Tai Chi. Some Tai Chi experts didn't even need strength, and only needed technique to bring someone down. But Fang Yixing knew very well that with his Tai Chi cultivation without strength, facing an opponent like the black-cloaked man, the only road left for him was death. He didn't want to win, and only wanted to fight to the death. The saber's energy was sharp, fierce, and decisive. The whistling cold wind was slashed apart by this saber, and even his body became hot. Fang Yixing could only use 70% of his power in this saber, but because of the murderous intent in his heart, there was an additional power that could frighten one's soul. Whoosh! The black cloak shook, and the black-cloaked man's body flew into the air, and he started to retreat at an extremely fast speed. He actually chose to retreat. A saber with no chance of survival, a saber that would put himself in a dead end, naturally could make people feel fear. Fang Yixing only wanted to use this saber. Fang Yixing thought that he could only use this saber. The black-cloaked man retreated, and his battle intent surged once again. The long saber that was tied to his palm and arm let out a sharp sound, waiting for the moment to drink blood and seal the throat to arrive. Fang Yixing's body rushed forward, and he chased after the black-cloaked man. One retreated and the other attacked. Fang Yixing ran faster and faster, and in the end, his feet didn't even touch the ground, and his body jumped high in the air. Another saber slashed over. It was still a machete with no defense, a machete with no return. But the black-cloaked man swung his long sleeves, and a long black cloth covered Fang Yixing. Fang Yixing didn't dodge, and his saber slashed towards the black cloth. Rip! Fang Yixing's saber slashed a huge hole in the black cloth, but Fang Yixing's body was kicked away by the black-cloaked man's leg that came out from below. Thump! Fang Yixing's abdomen was hit, and his body fell onto the snowy ground, sliding backward. He slid for a very, very long time, until the inertia disappeared, and his body finally stopped. He felt a sweetness in his throat, and a large amount of blood came out. "I'm not dead, and I didn't lose my saber." Fang Yixing wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and the saber was still tied to his arm, and he thought, "I can still slash again." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.